Welcome back to the closing kilometres on today's stage. We're heading into Pavia today, 207 kilometres, just on 18 kilometres to run. And at the back of the field, a glimpse there of Riebenbauer. He's called his team back now because he's having real difficulty in rejoining the back of a speeding big bunch of riders here, being driven on by the sprinters' teammates as usual, and in particularly by Fassa Bortolo.
Fassa Bortolo from the for Pataki. He's in the Ciclamino jersey. It looked like Riebenbauer might catch up now. There's been a little bit of slowing in the tempo in the front, and that's his teammates have come back to help him back into the peloton. Maybe they were trying to do a big lead out for Magnus Backset, who we saw finish 4th place earlier on one of the big mass finishes. So Backset in with the chance today. All of the sprinters remaining in the race probably feel this is their best chance to finally get a stage after the dominant Mario Cipollini has been put out of the race because of that bad crash he had.
Well, they probably want to get Riebenbauer back into the main field, because in that dramatic stage finish the other day, Bob, into Sandone de Piave, Riebenbauer finished 13th behind all of the chaos, Mario Cipollini, Galvez, and of course your favourite Angelo Furlan going down as well. He's back in the fold, but I should think his heart rate went up to about 250 when that happened, because that ditch he went into was certainly very full of water.
It's a long way down to the water level too. It's a nasty shock, but at least it was a soft landing and he seems fine. Just a little bit embarrassed probably, but we'll never know because he's covered in mud as he now comes back to the tail of the peloton. But when you look down there, the big pack of riders at this stage of the race, it is a real battle, and it'll take him a few kilometres to get through the traffic if he's trying to rejoin the front. And the team sending riders back at this stage could weaken them. Here he is now, time for a sponge down and a clean-up, because they're working for Magnus Backstedt to try and, you know, that man could win the sprint. He is sprinting very well, and they've wasted a bit of energy there going back and bringing him back into the peloton. But they've done it. He's absolutely soaking wet.
He's very damp, I tell you. He won't dry out before the end of today's stage, and I think he'll be happy. And that's what builds team spirit, though, isn't it, Bob? If something like that happens to a bike rider, it doesn't take that much more energy to go back and pace a guy over the last 400 or 500 metres. It's more psychological than anything else, because he could have picked his way slowly but surely through the cars, but you can see his teammates here. I think it was pretty funny. Frank Hoy, he's always got something humoristic to say.
Well, I'm sure we get a lot of the writings of Frank Hoy sent to us over the internet, especially on some of the websites. He has his own, and Frankie Hoy, a very funny man, great little bike racer as well, and I'm sure he'll have something to write about his teammate Riebenbauer. But like you said, Paul, it is very nice when you're in difficulty to have some of your teammates come back and help you get back into the peloton. So I think taking a little bit of pity on their teammate Riebenbauer, who they saw flip through the air and into the ditch there, luckily, and thank heavens he wasn't hurt.
Well, he was lucky that happened at the back end of the main field, because he had a lot of teammates around him at the time. These guys at the front getting a little bit upset by the proximity of the television camera bike there, because he's causing the speed to get picked up rather falsely as riders move forward to try and get into the slipstream of that bike. Right now, there's no one team on the front end of the main field as we move forward to the 15-kilometre to go banner. And very shortly, I think we'll get a chance to see whether or not the Domino Vacanze team of Mario Cipollini, who's no longer in the bike race, will try and give the victory to the younger man, Daniele Benatti, who has proved to be a very fine worker for Cipollini when he was here over the first few days of the Giro. Or whether, in fact, Bob, they will turn it round and maybe give the chance to Giovanni Lombardi, who, in his own right, is a very fast finisher.
He won a stage in last year's Giro d'Italia after spending most of the race leading out Cipollini, who won 6 stages on the race. So the Domino Vacanze team, absolutely fantastic, best in the business at the lead out. Nobody does it better. I think they'll go through those motions, and it'll be a question to see if they're going to lead out Lombardi or Benatti. The last field sprint we had, it was Lombardi leading out for Benatti. There's the Francais Jus team on the back. They have a fast man too, and Bernard Eisel, who's been up there in some of the sprints. He might recognize that today is a very good chance for him to get a stage.
Well, he's been very consistent in the early sprints, and he's been very close to the back wheel of Mario Cipollini on a couple of occasions. An interesting little story came through overnight about the performance of Gilberto Simoni in that time trial yesterday, Phil. He himself was not surprised by his performance. In fact, he predicted he would do a good ride before the start. But he rode round the course in the morning with Maurizio Fondriest, and because of that rising headwind, he decided to knock down his gear ratios from a 54-tooth sprocket on the front, which most of the other contenders at actually used, and used a 53, and that may well have given him the advantage over the last 9 kilometres when the wind really was right on the riders' faces.
It was a good move. He certainly pedals with a faster cadence than Garzelli, who was pedalling, I think it was 54.11 as soon as he left the start house. And of course the result was he was up at the first check and down for the rest of the ride. Oh, looking down at the peloton, they're reshuffling the pack all of the time. If they sense a little slowing down, then they start to put their men forward. It's a giant chess game now as they move the riders, the domestiques, the helpers to the front to set the pace and hopefully line up the men they want to win on their team as they run down now 14 kilometres or slightly less to go to the finish. And they are just about flat out here, about 48 kilometres now, just on 30 miles an hour. The pacemaking at the moment, Gianluca Tonetti is number 178 there on the 10X team, who have only got 5 riders of their 9 left in now. So we're closing down on the finish. The pink jersey having not a day off by any means. He's got to finish the stage, but he's not worried about who wins it because he's more interested in just getting home today. But the man in the Ciclamino jersey, he would love to win the stage and continue leading this race on points. We'll take another short break. And welcome back to the Giro d'Italia as the kilometres chip off. We're down to 12 to go to the finish now. The peloton still all together.
Well, everybody's starting to get very nervous right now. We've seen 1 or 2 little incidents at the back end of the main field, but slowly but surely as we get closer to town, they are picking up the pacemaking. And in fact, Pavia has got a very interesting history in relation to professional cycling, because it was here back in 1885 that the first Italian cycling organisation was registered, the Union Velocipedista Italiana. So I would have a say, Bob, that they would certainly like to get themselves into town as quickly as possible. And strangely enough, because of its link, I'm surprised that this is only going to be the 3rd time the race has ever been to Pavia. Surprisingly enough, back in '69 was the first time when Olli Ritter, the man who at one time held the world hour record, was first across the line. And then in '81, the man you were talking about earlier, the very good individual pursuiter as well from Switzerland, Daniel Gissiger, got himself the stage win. Today's, however, I think it's going to be the name of a sprinter who will add himself to the history books.
Well, it could be another Scandinavian in the shape of Magnus Backstedt, who's sprinting very well. He's been up in the places in the stage sprints when the big sprinters were still in the race, so maybe if he gets it right, he could take home a stage win. He's won 1 stage in the Tour de France in the years gone by, first ever Swedish cyclist to do that. As we now look at the peloton, about 9 kilometres from the finish, Bob, and there's no way anybody's going to slip away now, I don't think.
No, absolutely not. It'll stay all together to the finish, and it'll be up to Alessandro Petacchi, see if he can win another stage. He's been the dominant sprinter so far. He's made all of these sprints look so easily. I think it would be almost a foregone conclusion for this stage if he hadn't been involved in a really, really tough crash, tumbling off the bike in yesterday's time trial, cuts to his back. They thought initially that his hip might be broken. They did x-rays that proved to be not the case, just very sore. On his hip pointer, elbow, knees, so both arms and all his back. There he is, you can see a lot of the bandages. He's riding near to the front. He did not look happy at the sign-on. I think he would have been capable of winning the sprint with ease had he not had that crash yesterday. So at this point, it's anybody's bike race, and it'll be a furious sprint to the finish. Riders like Zvorada, Furlan, Benadi, Eisel recognizing the best chance perhaps that they've had in the whole Giro so far.
Well, looking down there at the leader of the points competition in that Ciclamino jersey, Petacchi, there's his latest gap. You get 25 points for a win today. First 15 riders over the line receive points, and as you can see, Petacchi's got a good lead here, 53 points ahead of Stefano Garzelli. And barring accidents, of course, and we nearly had one yesterday which took him out of the race, he should win this competition when he gets down to Milan. He's having his finest ever Giro. He's won 4 stages so far, and he held the race lead for the first 6 days this time around. So everything working well for him just now. Not surprisingly then, his teammates are working hard for him, and also we can see Pietro Cappioli there just briefly, number 2 his number was. He's setting the pace for Angelo Furlan.
Interesting to see, Phil, also the yellow jerseys of the Vinnie Calderolo team moving forward as well. I would think Stefano Garzelli has certainly looked to mix it in with the action at the front, try and get himself a few seconds bonus as well.
Right, he's made this a battle of seconds. He's been snicking seconds in the sprints, and he's going to try and remain a challenger. There's 2 big mountain days still left in this tour. At the moment, about 12 kilometres. We'll take a break. And welcome back. We are 6 kilometres from the finish. That's about 7.5 minutes of racing now for the whole field here in the Giro d'Italia. A real chance for the sprinters. A pure sprinters finish this time, Bob.
Yes, absolutely. Pure sprinters. The pace on the front has been a very mixed bag of teams. Fossa right now at the front. We've also seen the Denardi team up at the front. They might be leading it out for Anders Oj. We haven't seen very much of the Estonian sprinter. And the Lampre team now coming to the front for their man, Zvorada. Also, you can see the La Française du team, who they have Bernard Eisel, a very fast sprinter. But look at Pataki defending his position for the sprint right in the front, lining up on Benatti's wheel, who was on the wheel of Giovanni Lombardi. So it looks like they're going to lead out Benatti, the Domina Vacanze team today.
Also, look out for the yellow jerseys of Stefano Garzelli, mixing it with the sprinters today. This man can perform in the mountains and in the time trial, and today he's looking to try and get himself a few bonus seconds at the end of the stage to pull himself just that little bit closer to Gilberto Simoni. There's the banner indicating 5 kilometres to go, 3 miles of racing left. That's around about 6 minutes, but it is, I think, Phil, going to be rather a chaotic finish because nobody for the moment has complete and utter control over the front end of the main field. I would think Pataki may well have loosened up his muscles and his injuries on this long ride this afternoon. The temperature's been ideal, around about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Look at that, Garzelli's team moving him up around the outside. There was the man who fell off just a little bit earlier, Reibenbauer on the right-hand side. He's recovered absolutely admirably. Pataki on the left there. Everybody moving forward right now. It looks as if Jimmy Casper is up there as well, fairly close to the front.
Well, Fassa Bortolo seem to think they've got the men and the team to do the job, but Hawkeye Bob Roll spotted that Benatti was nicely positioned on the wheel of Giovanni Lombardi. Lombardi was born in this town, but he is the lead-out man now for this 22-year-old, and he's trying to deliver him a stage win.
Arvidsson moving to the front there, the Norwegian champion. I have to say, Bob, that is a very good move there. I do think that Lombardi will try and sacrifice himself this afternoon for his younger teammate. He is the kind of bike rider who realises he's got to look out for the men on the way up, and I have a feeling that this young man, Daniel Benatti, 1 win under his belt this year. That was in the Tour of the Mediterranean. He feels he's got a chance, but I really wonder what Marco Pantani's doing there, number 141 on the right-hand side in the yellow jersey.
It's remarkable, Bob. We've never worked this out yet, have we?
It is absolutely amazing to see both Garzelli and Marco Pantani at the front of the bike race so close to the finish line. I think they just want to keep their GC men out of trouble. For Garzelli, however, it's a chance to perhaps, because a few time bonus seconds, is claw his way a little bit closer to the dominant GC rider so far, Gilberto Simoni.
Well, Fassa Bortolo, the team of what was Mario Cipollini's team, in second place. Fassa, and then the team again of Cipollini's, ex-Cipollini's team, of course, on this race. They have got control of the front. Here comes a rush from Lampre up the outside because Jan Zverada is beginning to finish very, very quickly indeed. Also coming up there, the champion of Great Britain, Julian Wynne, in that red, white and blue champions jersey. And the Denardi boys are pushing forward as well, possibly for Palumbo. And so they're all trying to get in on the act because they all think they can win this stage.
Magnus Baxter pretty close to the front as well. Just a little bit of traffic furniture there as we get to the straighter part of the finish. The last 2 kilometres are reasonably straight with that final little bend at 300 metres to go. Still on the front end of the main field, it's the team of Alessandro Pataki, and you see once a man has done his job, he swings off and he doesn't care now whether he loses a minute or 2 minutes in the last couple of kilometres. It would seem now as if Domina Vacanze are starting to take over, get themselves organised. It isn't the big organised lead-out that they would give to Mario Cipollini, and there will still be an awful lot of chaos, I think, in 10th to 15th position, Bob.
Yes, absolutely. This is a sprint where you see a lot of riders not accustomed to leading out their men, especially the Denardi guys up at the front. Lombardi moving up there on the outside. They're a little bit too far back, and this is going to be a very interesting sprint. No one, like you said, has real control over the peloton, and they're coming into about 2Ks to go now, and it is Domina Vacanze at the moment on the front, but it's interspersed with Fassa Bortolo riders. They're going to the Domina Vacanze, then Fassa Bortolo, then you see Denardi, couple of riders, and then Pataki is tacked on right in the back of the Denardi guys, and on behind him is Lombardi, and on his wheel is got to be Daniele Benatti going for a stage win in Lombardi's hometown.
And there he is, exactly that, Bob. Lombardi is there, and they're marking the man they feel is going to lead them to the line, and they're going to go round him if they can. The men at the front here just keeping the pressure on now at 2 kilometres to go.
Well, 2Ks to go. It's still nice, long and straight. The Denardi Kolpak rider up there in the mix as well is the Estonian rider Andrus Aug. He's a pretty good sprinter on occasions. There you can see him with the light blue jersey moving around the outside. There's Jimmy Casper in the white jersey from Française des Jeux. Still the man who leads the points competition despite having that dramatic crash yesterday, Phil, is very much close to the front end of the main field. There is Angelo Forlan moving on his shoulder there with the number 3 on his back. He too was involved in that crash there with Mario Cipollini. Dario Pieri moving forward as well there, Bob, I think, for the Seiko team, maybe thinking of the possibility of a last-minute attack.
Angelo Furlan looking very comfortable, moving up in the wind, no trouble at all. A little bit of sketchy riding there for the wheel of Pataki there. It looked like Furlan moved up without any effort at all to get onto Pataki's wheel. He might look out for the lead out from him, and this is going to be a real drag race to the finish line between a lot of guys. 1 kilometer to go now.
Well, another man swinging off, his pacemaking done for the day. It's the big man there coming to the front, the oldest man in the bike race for Domino Vacanzi, Mario Sierra. Normally leads out Mario Cipollini, but right now he will take it up to an exceptionally high speed. Auge is up into 2nd position there, but it looks as if Domino Vacanzi have got the control. You can see the British national champion there on the left-hand side, Julian Wynne, moving forward. He's got his face into the wind a long way out from the finishing line right now, but it is Domino Vacanzi with control on the front end of the main field. It may well give the young rider on their squad, Bernati, a chance for victory.
Well, Bernati is right there, 3rd wheel. Pataki's got 4th wheel, and this is going to be a very Furlan is trying to get onto Pataki's wheel as well. Now they're beginning to launch them for the line here now. It's a very tight bend, this Lombardy round first. Bernati 2nd, Pataki 3rd, as they break for the finish now. Surely this is going to be a great result. If Bernati could win, what a perfect result it would be. Here he goes now. He's taking with him Pataki. Pataki is coming over nicely. Has Pataki got the legs now as Eisel comes on the left of the road? Pataki and Eisel, and Pataki get it. Eisel 2nd, I think Verrada 3rd, and probably Lombardi in 4th.
Well, that was a great lead out, you know, but you have to say, well, look at that man there. He's got the Ciclamina jersey on his shoulders. We didn't even know whether he was going to start or not this morning, involved in a very dramatic crash after 25 kilometers, and he doesn't want anybody to touch him, because I'll tell you one thing, despite just winning that stage, his body is still hurting from yesterday's accident.
Well, that is incredible. It was a perfect lead out. He had to use other team riders as well. Indeed, the Lombardi's team helped him in the end, but he's now got his 5th stage win. Before this Giro started, he was ruining the fact he always finished 2nd. Well, he'd never won a stage. Now he's got 5, Bob.
Absolutely incredible. Overnight, can you imagine the agony that he was in, tossing and turning, waking up every few minutes as he rolled over onto his cuts. He's there with his soigneur. He's going to try to take care of him. That is the hardest fought sprint win for him this year. He's being inundated there. Like you said, Paul, he didn't want anybody to touch him because he is so covered with cuts. There's no way you could give him a hug of congratulations without sending him into even more agony that he has been in since that big crash yesterday in the time trial. A great stage win, perhaps his best yet for Alessandro Pataki.
Well, actually, Phil, just looking at his face there as the interviews began, you could see the pain. In fact, it was it was Jimmy Casper who got up there ahead of Jans Verrada. But that is a face that reflects the pain that this man has gone over the last 24 hours, and what a superb manoeuvre by him to come up through the middle, and that, as Bob has said, Phil, must have been a very difficult sprint indeed. Let's look at it just one more time.
Well, he looks as though that looked like Eisel to me down there, but they're saying it was Jimmy Casper, the other Française des Jeux sprinter, who came through at the last minute. And in fact, it is Casper, number 73. So he replaced Eisel in the last 500 or 600 metres. And maybe Eisel was feeling not so good in the sprint finish today. But as they come towards the line now, Pataki had got himself perfectly positioned for this very tricky bend. But I thought the Domino Vacanzi lads, with local knowledge, had just triumphed that little bit better coming off that final bend. But perhaps the youngster didn't quite have the finish, because Pataki was being given here a perfect lead out to the line, and when it came to the final sprint, he had the big gear and he forgot about his injuries, at least for the next 15 seconds or so as he came through. Casper challenging him right up to the line, and that's the best Jimmy's come to a stage win as well.
Well, he really has improved over the last week. Shows that he's managed to get himself through the mountains. But what a long way back he came from, Jimmy Casper, just on the left-hand side, as did Jans Verrada there in the blue and pink jersey of Lampre. But the man who timed it all to perfection is the man right in the middle there in the Ciclamina jersey, leader of the points competition, making it for him in this year's Giro d'Italia win number 5. And I think that may well be the one that he's enjoyed the most.
Well, a very clear win. He held the jersey for 6 days. He's a clear leader in the points competition. He gets another 25 there, and he's now got 5 stage wins. Cipollini got 6 last year, and there's still a possibility he could rival that, because there's one more possible stage for him. There are 2 mountain stages and, of course, a time trial still to come. Looking down, they'll probably get a time split as well on that, because there's some holes in that peloton. There's the face of Jans Verade. I've got him down in 3rd place, as Bernardi will have to be content with 4th. So the race is over, but the prize presentations are still to come, so we'll take a short break, come back and join us, and we'll bring you right up to date. The city of Pavia has just witnessed the end of the 16th stage of the Giro d'Italia. Just 5 more stages still to be held, and Alessandro Patacchi has brought quite a familiar feel to it. There's the result, getting in ahead of Caspers, Verade, Bernardi, Gaspari, Pieri, Auge it was for Dinardi trying to get the win. He finished there in 7th place. There's the crowd now. They've flooded onto the course as we continue here to look at the order of the finish, and Pantani amazingly crossing the line there in 10th place, with Di Biase and Bagstead locked together in that Intergiro competition lower down together. That's what happened to Patacchi in the time trial yesterday. He finished the time trial as he had to, and immediately went to hospital, and he said he would give his opinion whether he would start next day or not on the day. Well, as we now know, he not only started, Bob, he finished. Now, you were listening in when he made some comment to the press on the finishing line there. What did he say?
Well, right on the line, the Italian television reporter asked him what the stage meant to him, and he said it meant more to him to honor the Ciclamino jersey, the purple points jersey, and so he felt like we thought he would, that this was his best win yet in the Giro d'Italia. It's number 5, and then the reporter asked, apart from the pain that you're going through, do you remember any of the sensations in the sprint? And Patacchi reassured her that apart from the pain, he can't remember anything.
I think that's marvellous. And Patacchi, this tour going for him better than he ever imagined. The first 6 days of the race, he was in the pink jersey. Now he's won 5 stages. He's a clear leader in that points competition. Every time you win a stage, you get 25 points. Only the first 15 over the line count. And the man with the highest total will take off the final pink jersey in Milan, which is not that far away. 2 hilly stages to come, 2 flat stages and a time trial, and that will see us to the end. And don't forget that tomorrow is a rest day here, and that means that they will not be able to race tomorrow, or they'll be out training, no doubt. Well, the crowd are waiting like we are for the prize presentation. We'll stay with you a little bit longer before we'll have to close down our live coverage. But here's the sprint finish for you again. And he got the perfect lead out from other teams' riders today. Jimmy Casper putting in his best performance there for 2nd place. Verade getting in on the left of our picture in 3rd, and little Daniel Bernardi showing us what he might well be in the years ahead. A very rapid finisher indeed. His stamina not lasting the home straight here. He slipped away into 4th place, but at 22.5 years of age, he's allowed that. I'm sure in another couple of years, very few riders will be beating him if he continues in progression like this. Well, those bandages didn't even hinder him at all, Paul.
Well, I think it slowed him down just a little bit, because his win was not as dominant as it has been over the last few stages. Certainly he will have dug very deep into the suitcase of courage, Phil, to get himself across the line in 1st place. Nice to see Jimmy Casper getting up there as well, but I think for the man who crossed the line in 1st position there, seriously, he did do great honour to the leader of the points competition jersey today.
All right, well, while we're looking at the crowd thronging, I wonder if we can actually see the general classification. Oh, we can. There we are. Look at that. 71 hours of racing now for Gilberto Simoni. All of that riding just to open up a 1 minute and 58 seconds lead over Garzelli. And Garzelli not snatching a bonus there, so he's got to look for somewhere else here. Popovic, no change at all, because all of the riders finishing together in that big pack. No time splits apparently, so the time gap's exactly the same as it was 207 kilometres ago when they set out today from Arco di Trento. Gazzali 2nd, Popovic 3rd, Andre Noah is 4th. This will go, of course, after tomorrow's flattish stage to 2 days in the high mountains again, with 2 more mountaintop finishes. Now, it just looks as though we can't get the prize presentation for you because they're still waiting to sort it all out, but here's where we go the day after tomorrow, because it's a rest day tomorrow. Then we move on to Salice Terme, to Asti, stage 17, which will come to you live on Wednesday morning, remember, at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And our prime time show, as always, on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time and Pacific Time. Well, there he is on the podium, the winner of the day. He's taken off his pink jersey because he's about his Ciclamino jersey, because he will get another one very shortly. Alessandro Patacchi now has 5 stage wins. Last year Mario Cipollini won 6. He has one more chance in which he can win a stage, and that will come when the race resumes on Wednesday. Don't forget, our website reveals all. olntv.com is the place to come and visit us. We hope you're enjoying the coverage. Goodbye for now. Go. He won't be feeling a totally relieved man who's won this tour with 5 days left, because that margin is still there, 158. Could be wiped out with an inspired climb on the 2 mountaintop finishes we've got still to come by Garzelli. Popovic there in 3rd place, Rumsas completing top 5. Further down, Casagrande, up and down for him, but still holding a good position in 6th place. And Marco Pantani propping up the top 10, just over 10 minutes back. Of some notables, excellent ride being done here by Massimo Codol. He hasn't won many races in his life, but he's riding well in this one. And Aito Gonzalez there, who won the time trial stage. He'll be looking again to win the final day of this race, which is another time trial of approximately the same distance, around 40 kilometres. Paul, the time trialists and the climbers can take a back seat today, can't they?
They should be able to, because again it's a very short stage. It's nice of the organisers to put in a short stage the day after a rest day. The stage is just 117 kilometres and it's reasonably flat. There's just a small blip on the radar halfway through the course, but it goes from Salice Terme to Asti, and in theory it should be an ideal day for the sprinters, and maybe once again for Patacchi.
Well, thank you, Paul. And we're looking now at the face here of Martin Vashtier, the only attacker of the day thus far. 2 minutes 27 seconds up and around about 55 kilometres ridden of the 117. It took him a while to get clear. He was out front by hovering at 20 seconds for the best part of half an hour. Then all of a sudden the peloton decided to not hunt him down, at least for the moment, and his lead has gone out. He's had a maximum lead of 2 minutes and 35. And the latest check moments ago was 2:27. There's the peloton. They're starting to speed up a little bit now. The Seiko team, not surprisingly, the majority of the riders on the front. You can see the pink jersey in the middle of them. That's the team captain of Seiko, Gilberto Simoni. So 169 riders started this race in Lecce 2.5 weeks ago. 138 are still with us, and 5 of the 19 teams of 9 have still got all 9 men riding. And they're looking to try and get them now all into the finish in Milan. Well, it's the hottest day of the race so far by them at the moment, and riders like Patacchi here happy to ride some of that stiffness out of his back, and looking for a 6th stage win to match what Mario Cipollini did last year. He got 6 wins. The record, by the way, Paul, is 12 wins for Binder. I don't think he can possibly do that, but he certainly can't now. There's not enough stages left.
Well, he hasn't got a chance to do it this year, but he certainly would like to equal the record of Mario Cipollini, a man who he's got an awful lot of respect for. And in fact, at the start line this morning and in the Italian press, the rumours are rife that the organisation of the Society Tour de France will be making some kind of an announcement today about whether or not Mario Cipollini and his team Domino Canzi will get a position in the upcoming Tour 2003 Tour de France. But I think that's a rumour that maybe the Italians have perpetrated themselves.
Well, if they're going to make it, of course, they're going to have to make an early announcement to give Cipollini the time to put himself in the right frame of mind to pick himself up for the Tour. He's actually still quite stiff after his crash in this race, and he's been continuing with hospital investigation just to make sure he is okay. So it was quite a nasty little tumble he had in that run-in. This is the lone leader today, riding beneath the hot skies of northern Italy. He's 2 minutes and 27 seconds ahead, but he still has a long way to go. He's about 15 kilometres before the little 3rd category climb. There's the chasers. We'll take a break. And welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. Martin Vashtier is the hare today, 2.5 minutes ahead of all of the riders as they bask beneath the hot northern Italy sun today. And this is the rider from Alessio last year, joined the new team of 10X this time around, looking at Marco Pantani's Mercatoni Uno team, all sitting at the back, waiting for the race to liven up. But the gap, the tempo's really been picked up in the last 15 minutes or so. It's now down to 1 minute and 44 seconds. Now don't forget, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, come and join us in the chat room at olntv.com, and you can have a little chat with me, Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll. Ask what you like about cycling, and we'll do our best to answer the questions for an hour just before our prime time show at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Well, there's the race leader, 8 days in the pink, and not looking like a man who's going to give it up either before Milan, unless his form mysteriously disappears on the 2 mountaintop finishes to come. They are riding, I think, Bob, we're on a race record speed now, and we've come through the majority of the mountains, still 2 to go, but Simone, he's just not made any mistakes.
No, he's run a perfect Giro so far. He's been there in the mountains. He's gotten time on both the Zone Colan and the Alpe de Pompeiago on all of his rivals. He got time on all of the rivals that he has in this race on the Terminillo climb as well, except for Stefano Garzelli. Garzelli's done a good Giro himself to keep himself pretty close, 1:58. One thing we noticed a couple of years ago when Gilberto Simoni was winning the Giro d'Italia is how much better he had become at time trialing. Initially during his career, just an absolutely brilliant climber, but a pure climber, no power whatsoever on the flats, and suffered a lot and lost a lot of time in the time trials. He worked diligently on his position in the wind tunnel and with Cannondale, his bike sponsor, to get the perfect position and just the right level of aerodynamics. He's also developed a very high pedaling cadence, and for a climber to do well in time trials, I think that's a critical element. You have to use a very fast pedaling cadence, and Simone has not only gotten time on the climbs, he's also gotten time on his rivals in the time trials. So Simone's become a very complete bike racer, and now we see him in the lead. I wouldn't say it's an unassailable lead in the Giro so far. If he has some trouble in the mountains, Garzelli could still win, but he's done a great job to be where he is right now in the Giro d'Italia, looking like our odds-on favorite at the beginning is going to come through, and if he can hold on for 5 more stages, today shouldn't be too bad, dead flat, couple of mountain stages and 1 more time trial, we'll see him win his 2nd Giro d'Italia.
And this has been a strange tour, Paul, in many ways, because there has been no breakaway succeeding, unless it was for the pink jersey, and the riders have been complaining about this. People like Scott Sunderland, riders looking for an opportunist move to win a stage. The peloton have never allowed a rider or a small group to succeed this year.
I think the big advantage we look here at Marco Pantani for the sprinters is they've all had several good teams who've been prepared to work together, which is why the breakaways haven't succeeded in a race like the Giro d'Italia. Normally there's nearly always one stage when it happens, but to come back to what Bob was saying earlier, this has so far been one of the fastest ever Giros. We still have a couple of days when that average speed may well tumble, but for the moment the riders have covered this race at an average of 39.082 kilometers per hour, which is just a fraction faster than the holder of the record, Beppe Cerrone, who did that back in 1983, and that was 38.9 kilometers an hour. It could still turn around, but I think that could be in part explanation as to why the breakaways haven't succeeded. The speed on these flat stages has been so high. Martin Vastia rode away from the main field a little earlier after about 20 kilometers of today's stage, built himself up this big lead of almost 2 3/4 minutes, and just the impetus, Bob, of the main peloton is just bringing it back quite simply.
Well, one gets the feeling that Martin Vastia has gone up the road for publicity reasons, and he will be brought back into the fold before a big sprint finish into Asti. That's what we've seen throughout the Giro d'Italia. I don't think today's stage will be any different than that. The 10X team sending Vastia up the road. One thing that the Facta team did, they were in almost every breakaway throughout the first few stages of the race, and finally Arvidsson got a stage win for the Facta team. So 10X using the same sort of strategy, and the Facta team coming up huge with the goods for Arvidsson with the big stage win there. And you never know, if you don't attack, you don't have a chance. So the 10X team, at least they're sending riders up the road, and one of these days, one of these breakaways is going to work.
Well, if Martin Vastia was to ride this stage from start to finish day, I think the race time is going to be equal to the time that he is behind overall, because he started the day 2 hours and 22 minutes and 2 seconds behind Gilberto Simoni, and that'll be about the race time today, I would think. There's the Seiko boys down there. We just saw, in fact, Pieri riding back, giving us a wave with his back of his racing jersey full of drinking bottles. About now he should be arriving amongst his teammates to do the distribution, but there's the team around Simoni. Been a very good team. All of the riders on it are still there, which means he's made a good team selection. This has been Seiko's year so far. They've been riding exceptionally well in the Spring Classics, and of course they want to continue too in the Tour de France, but they've got a setback at the moment. Dai Luca there, one of their top riders, is out with an injury, and hope he can get back in time for the Tour.
Well, Gilberto Simoni has said that he would really like to see De Luca recover from that injury, Phil. It was a compound fracture of the clavicule, and they have operated on it, and he should be able to get himself back on the bike within weeks. In fact, he's already started to train on a home trainer. It really is remarkable how these athletes can come back from an incident like that, and De Luca certainly has banked most of his season this year on being in the Tour de France team for Seiko to look after Gilberto Simoni, who now feels he can actually challenge Lance Armstrong in the mountains, and he certainly will, I think, go out on the attack and try and put Armstrong under difficulty. I think Armstrong is head and shoulders the favourite at the Tour de France again to try and win it for a 5th time. But I think this time, Bob, for the first time in many, many years, there are about 10 riders behind him who've got a serious chance of actually going out on the attack.
Well, when we saw the way Aitor Gonzalez won the Tour of Spain last year, we thought, okay, here's finally a real rival for Lance Armstrong. Then the way he started the Giro d'Italia was not that great, so we were like, well, maybe not. Maybe Lance is still without a huge rival apart from Jan Ullrich on the horizon. But then Gonzalez really put in a commanding performance in the time trial, and he has steadily improved in the mountains. And this might prove to be a very good preparatory race for Aitor Gonzalez for the Tour de France. He hasn't had a lot of pressure to be competitive for the pink jersey of overall race leadership, so he's been able to really ride himself into very good form, and he just won the time trial in this race. We'll see how he does on the last time trial, but like you said, Paul, I think there'll be a lot of riders queuing up to try to chase Lance Armstrong. The latest one, Gilberto Simoni, he said a lot about the same thing when he won the Giro a couple years ago, that he could possibly one day challenge Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France. He's added that the main thing he would enjoy seeing is Lance come to the Giro d'Italia and put in a real challenge to Mr. Armstrong. But the way Lance has demolished the field year after year in the Tour, we need some rivals.
Yeah, we do. But I can't ever see Lance Armstrong coming to the Giro d'Italia. It's not his race. He's got nothing to prove here. Whereas the people of the United States know what it means if he wins the Tour de France. But it will be great to see him. Sean Kelly was another rider who never did ride in the Giro d'Italia. We'll take another break and then we'll continue our pursuit. Looking down at some of the beauty here as we head now into the area of Asti, where they make the famous Asti Spumante sparkling wine, Bob.
Yes, the sparkling wines of Italy, coming from here in Veneto especially. Asti Spumante, if you enjoy your champagne bubbles, some of the best wine in the world comes out of this region, even though it's not as well known, of course, as the French champagnes.
Well, let's not forget they've also got a very nice full-bodied red comes from there, the Barolo wine as well. We've actually left the region of Lombardia behind us this morning and heading now into the Piemonte region. Looking down on the main field, there's the British national champion on the right-hand side, Julian Wynne, and I think having a very good 3-week bike race. For the first time he's taken part in a Grand Tour, and at the moment he's at the front end of the peloton riding alongside the leader of the bike race, Gilberto Simoni.
Well, there are 3 British riders in the race. They're all still continuing. Bradley Wiggins on the Française de Jeu team is 3rd from the end of the classification, but he's riding this for experience, and let's hope he can see Milan, which is still a couple of big mountains away. This is the leader today after 20 kilometres. Martin Vastier getting away. He's a Slovenian rider riding on Tenex for the first season for him. No threat at all to the race lead. 2 hours and 22 minutes behind as we go into this stage at 17. And the peloton are reacting now, and we might get a relationship here because the helicopter's pulling back, and there they are. So they are beginning to come in. They say that gap is 1 minute, but you can see by the speed of the peloton now we're about 3 or 4 kilometres, not much more than that, from the 3rd category climb at La Rosetta, which will take us to the 70-kilometre point, and it looks as though we're getting the boys on the front now from Sella Italia.
Well, they'll be trying to defend the lead of Freddy Gonzalez. He's there in 4th position. I'm very surprised to see him still battling for the small points in this year's Giro d'Italia. He's got a very good advantage in the King of the Mountains competition. He has 77 points ahead of Zabaya, who has 48. And on a stage like this with a 3rd category climb, which is really not suited to the climbing prowess of Freddy Gonzalez, the team are doing an awful lot of pacemaking. I think they'll probably catch him before the summit.
Well, he's only got about 1.5 kilometers to go before the top of the climb, but they might wipe that out in just a few kilometers, in just a few meters here. They're going very hard at the back. If he does stay away, they're racing so hard for 2nd place. It's pretty amazing. It's only 5, 3, and 1 points, I believe, for a Cat 3 King of the Mountain climb here in the Giro d'Italia. You can see them doing a big terrain there for Freddy Gonzalez. He's been a great climber in the Giro, but he's also had a pretty good sprint when we come up to these little Cat 3, Cat 2 climbs along the race route. So he'll be trying to go for some more points. points. If they can catch Vastia, that would be a good lead. We don't see Zavea in the picture right now. He's probably given up the ghost contesting these King of the Mountain, especially one for so little points.
Well, that's Grichenko on the right-hand side in the red and white jersey of the Landbau Credit Team. He's got himself a few points so far in the competition. A little further down, we're looking to see, I think there was a Kelme in the first 15, but this is a third category climb at Castagnole. And in fact, there's only 3 points for the first man to go over the summit, 2 for second and 1 for third. And I wonder if Marco Pantani at the back here, Phil, is thinking about stretching his legs out just a little bit, because Marco Pantani has been very aggressive so far, and he again adding to the rumour mill that always generates itself in the last week of the Giro d'Italia, saying that he would love to take part in the Tour de France this year, and maybe there's a possibility of a switch to the Bianchi team. But I'm not sure whether that's going to happen or not, or whether it's just a nice rumour to follow.
Yeah, I think it'll be very difficult to get the Union Cycliste Internationale to agree to another Pantani whim, but you never know. We're looking here at the man whose legs weren't in tune with his ambition today, because I think he's cracked on the climb as we come up here into La Rosetta, and I think they'll have him. In fact, they should do. They're not very far behind him now. This has been a huge effort by Sella Italia, and then they're going to launch little Freddie into first place. It's only 3 points. Here's the catch. This is the back at the front now. We can't see much, can we? But here comes the sprint, and there he goes. Freddie Gonzalez, no sign of Zavala challenging him from behind. So this is only for 3 points, but it will increase his lead because it means he will have 80 points. It is a bit of a challenge. Fortunato Balliani probably is just on his wheel. And these are the two that fell out the other day on the mountains when Balliani took him on. Oh, he's beat him again too. He's not going to like that, Paul.
Well, it's a rough race out there to try and get as many points as possible, but at least Freddie Gonzalez got himself a couple of extra points ahead of Zabaya. That was a very opportunist move there by Balliani. As we look down, it was fairly easy for Balliani to come by here. I think really the gradient wasn't that steep at the summit of the climb, and that gave Freddie Rodriguez second place. But certainly his team are taking this competition very seriously indeed. Let's just have a look, because on the line, in fact, it was a lunge, and only just Balliani coming by there to get himself first place, Bob.
Well, Freddie Gonzalez pipped him on the line the last time they had a KOM sprint, and then gave him a little bit of a chewing out, asking him why he was contesting these King of the Mountains. So Balliani paying him back there a little bit by coming around him just on the line.
Now, are they just going to settle down now and just return into the fold here? Fortunato Balliani there, waiting for them. There'll be a few strange words, I'm sure, because Freddie sees no point in Balliani challenging, but Balliani's looking for a little bit of a high finish himself in the King of the Mountains, although he's got little hope of challenging for the green.
He's going to have to do a fantastic job, Phil, because at the moment he's 21st in the King of the Mountains competition. 3 points will move him up into about 15th place, so he's got a long way to go to try and challenge Freddie.
He's tickling the prize list now. There could be €100 for that, which is about $100. As we look down on the peloton now, regrouping now as we go into what is the last 47 kilometres of the race today. So just about an hour, slightly more than an hour down to the finish at Asti. We've still got the big battle, of course, for the Intergiro. Currently the blue on the shoulders of the Swedish rider Maggie Backstedt. But he'll be challenged by Moreno Di Biasi. You can bet on that. The race then is all together as we take a break. And welcome back. We're looking here now at the riders from Fassa Bortolo. 47 kilometres from the finish, trying to set this stage up again now for Pataki. As we look here, the face looks familiar there, I have to say, but I can't tell you who he is, but he's enjoying the race. But look at this. Freddie Gonzalez has been awarded the King of the Mountain sprint there, ahead of Balliani and Dennis Lungi. Now, there's no doubt in our minds that Balliani was first over the line, but the judges have gone the other way. We'll try and show you that again now. Here's the sprint. It's Gonzalez on the right, and look at that. Just as they hit the line, he's won by about a wheel, Bob.
Yeah, that was an obvious win by Balliani, although you can see Freddie Gonzalez leading all the way up. And on the King of the Mountain sprint, it's obviously not like a finishing sprint. There's no cameras out there. It goes down to a microscopic decision by the judges. But that looked to us to be a pretty clear win by Balliani. And I think overnight they'll have a chance to review all of the sprints, and they might reverse that in the judges' eyes.
It's not particularly important. There's only a 1 point difference there, and Gonzalez is becoming a clear leader in that anyway. Balliani may not even bother to argue for 1 point, but it is something which we've noted since this race began in these sprints out on the road. The judges do seem to be not quite seeing it the way we do, but then we're the television commentators.
We have the hindsight 2020 going on here a little bit. We can review the tape a number of times and make sure that's exactly what the call should be. But that's not always the case with the officials, obviously.
Well, the whole of the main field back together now, Phil, and I think a moment of calm will come into the peloton before we start to accelerate towards the finish. Once again, it should be a day for the sprinters, and to throw another sprinter's name back into the mix, what about Jimmy Casper today? He got himself a second place, and today is a very special day for him, because it's his 25th birthday.
And he's a man who's never quite lived up to his big promise as a top sprinter. He came close to winning that stage 2 days ago, and that might have given him now the confidence he desires, because he's been playing second fiddle in the team to Bernhard Eisel, the Austrian member of the team, who's been sprinting very well. But at last he got it right the other day.
He got it very right, and in fact Eisel, one of the new signings, the first signings we've heard of so far for the following season. In fact, he's decided to renew his contract with the Française des Jeux team for the 2004 season. A man I think we should enjoy following over the next couple of years, because it could well be that we're finding a new sprinter starting to develop on the block.
You don't get many sprinters from Austria.
Not very many at all. They're normally renowned much more as mountain climbers, although in the past they've had some very good trackmen. There's the man who leads the bike race, Gilberto Simoni. Time for a picnic, time to keep up the energy levels, topped up as much as possible. He's looking very comfortable right now. Two very important days coming up for him, tomorrow and the day after, with two very interesting mountain top finishes. And tomorrow, Bob, a very tough mountain stage with, of course, the Cima Coppi, the highest point of the bike race.
Well, there's definitely some heavy-duty stages left. Simone is not taking anything for granted at all. A lot of the people interviewing him, the press in Italy asking him what he's going to do after the Giro, and Simone has no interest in that. So far, he wants to concentrate on getting through to Milan. He wants actually to get a little bit more time on Garzelli. He's not entirely confident of the minute 58 he has, so he has promised to attack in the last couple of mountain stages up to the Chianale climb. Very tough climb to finish off tomorrow's stage. He says that he feels really good, but he's still going to continue to try to get some seconds on Garzelli. Garzelli, on his part, has promised to fight on all the way to Milan.
Marco Pantani, 10th overall. I think a very respectable position for him, for a man who's been battling with himself basically over the last couple of years. He's talking about the possibility of finding a way into the Tour de France to try and match himself against Lance Armstrong. He's a great personality in the sport, Phil, and I would like to see him ride well over the next two big mountain stages. I think an older rider like Marco Pantani will have found the rhythm. He seems to have improved as this race has gone on, and he's got two very good chances over the next 2 days to show that Marco Pantani is the man of old. The team have done an excellent job looking after him all the time. Whenever we see Pantani, he has always been surrounded by at least 4 or 5 of his teammates looking after him.
Which is very typical of Pantani. He's always kept good control, and the team have always been loyal to him, no matter what condition he has been in. You've always seen Pantani surrounded by his teammates. 40 kilometres an hour today, so this race continues on a record schedule. Fast as ever. The record held back in 1983 by Beppe Cerrone could be in danger, although we've got two big tough mountain stages to come. The field take a U-turn as we nip off for some messages. We'll be back in just a moment. Back, this is Julio Perez having a chat with the team manager at the back of the field just now, and been a bit of a strange tour for him in this year's Giro d'Italia, Paul. He hasn't really challenged overall, and he threw away a chance of his repeating his King of the Mountains very early on.
I think possibly what they tried to do with him this year was to make him a contender. They had a feeling he could finish in the top 3 in the overall classification. In the first week, we saw him ride at the front end of the peloton on a number of occasions. Probably lost an awful lot of nervous energy trying to stay up at the front and not lose any time over the first week. When we came to the first big mountain, he was put under serious pressure. There is also a rumour that he had intestinal problems over the first 4 or 5 days too, but it just goes to show the pressure that is put on a rider, Bob, when you come in as a man trying to rival the overall classification, as opposed to going out and just trying to win an individual stage here or there.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Julio Perez might be able over time to handle more of the burden of responsibility of being the team leader. So it's such a big pressure cooker, especially when you're on an Italian team in the Giro d'Italia, to produce results. They wanted Perez to be a GC contender. Perhaps they should have concentrated on his ability to win stages in the big mountain days. He still has a couple of chances to win some stages, but it looks like his GC chances are well down and well out of it. There's a big man, Magnus Backstead, the Viking from the Facta team. He's a bit of a car nut, as well as leading the Intergiro, and the boss of the co-sponsors has promised him he can drive his Lamborghini around if he does come out the winner of the Intergiro. So you might see him sprinting very quickly for the Intergiro points the rest of the Giro.
It, Bob. I mean, Maggie is such a big guy, he won't be able to get inside the Lamborghini. So he's got no chance. So that's not an incentive.
So DiBiase is going to win.
No, well, yeah, but he would fit in better. But in fact, we're only about 5 or 6 kilometres from the Intergiro point now. That's why that light blue jersey is heading up towards the front of the peloton. That's the leader's jersey in the Intergiro competition. It comes at 86 kilometres in today. There's the situation at the moment. It's based on time, highly complicated. Just accept the fact that Backstead is leading it by 22 seconds and a minute 32 off Jan Zverada, and Jimmy Casper getting in on the scene as well now, and Zverada also beginning to sprint quite well. But I still think it's between the two of them, and that this might be a sprint for DiBiase today. We'll find out, eh?
Well, these two riders have got to keep very close to each other. The difference between them in the overall classification, as you said, Phil, just 22 seconds. Magnus Backstead taking his way through the peloton very carefully there, looking for his teammates to lead him out. In paper, theoretically, DiBiase is the much faster sprinter, but all Magnus Backstead has to do is to try and stay as close as possible to him over this stage, and in 3 days' time, the other flat stage, because Magnus has got the possibility of turning it all around once again in the final individual time trial into Milano, where again there will be an Intergiro point, which is based on real time. The rider who gets the first time check in the time trial will get his real time, and that's the important thing, I think, for Backstead. But he still has to go out and fight on every individual stage. The peloton at the moment very much under the control of Fassa Bortolo on the front. Cioni has been on the front with Brusegin for an awful long time, keeping the pacemaking very high. But as we get closer, and we're not very much more than 5 kilometres away right now from the Intergiro point, we will see the team of Moreno DiBiase come forward, take over the pacemaking, shadowed, I'm almost certain, by Team Facta, the team of Magnus Backstead.
Well, we've seen incredible battles for the Intergiro, and they've put him in the race just for this reason, to spice up these flat stages in the Giro where there's not a lot of breakaways, and they do come down to field sprints. So we have a sprint within the race for the Intergiro points in the Rocchetta Tanaro today, and I think we'll see another big lead out from both the Facta team as well as the Formaggi Pinzolo team of Moreno DiBiase. So look for those two teams to be on the front of the break race. I was a little bit surprised to see Jan Zverada going for those points. Now he stands third in the competition. You can see one of the Domina Vacanze riders, looks like the tall man Mario Schiera, coming up with a big pile. Looks like 1 in the hip and 3 on the back, 4 bottles. That's a good effort for Mario Schiera.
The oldest man in the race there, having to hand out the bottles today. As he's been to the back, we're waiting now to see when the Facta riders start to move forward. Now there's the Française de Jeu team starting to move their man up, Jimmy Casper, so he's taking an interest. Facta have moved closer to the front. It's DiBiase's team that needs to just pull the socks up now, and you'll see a change in the pacemakers in the next kilometre or so.
Well, you can see now how all the teams tend to group together when they come to the strategic points of any stage, and that's why we've got all the Lampre riders surrounding Jan Zverada as well. Still very much at the front end of the main field, the yellow jerseys of Marco Pantani's team. This is the man who finished second in Paris-Roubaix earlier this season. A huge beast of a man, Bob, a very strong bike rider, and in fact we're looking at him, and he's getting himself prepared now for the sprint as we go down towards the end. And Pieri, I think, is the kind of bike rider we'll see a lot more of when we go down to the one-day classics at the end of the season. As an overall contender, he's a long way down, Phil. 2.25 hours behind Gilberto Simoni in the classification.
So we're looking down on the field as we continue to approach the sprint. The boy in the Norwegian champions jersey there is also on the Facta team of Maggie Backstead. The game sells organised, but I noticed too, so did the Formaggio Pinzolo Fiave team. They've moved all of their men up. They're 1 man down. They lost Alaio Adriano when he gave up on the 12th day. We'll just take a break, come back and join us, and then we'll see the Intergiro sprint. And welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. 30 kilometres from the finish. We are fast approaching the sprint line now in the Intergiro here at Rocchetta. And we're getting a change of formation at the front and a slight split in the peloton as the Facta boys set the pace.
Well, they've set a rip-roaring pace, Phil, as we go through the 1 kilometre to go sign. In fact, the man caught in a little bit of difficulty there was the race leader, Gilberto Simoni. He had a teammate alongside him who will pace him back onto the main peloton. But as you can see, the speed that was set on the front end of the main field by the Facta team really has put the field under pressure with around about 30 kilometres to go.
Well, our cameras are staying with the pink jersey, which I don't know why, because he'll get back as soon as we cross the line. We really need to be seeing the front end of the race right now, and that's what we're seeing. Here's the sprint for the line now. Magnus Bagstedt leading out. Is he going to be challenged? Jans Verada on the right. This is going to be a good win for Magnus, and he's already telling his race director there, I've won that one.
Very cool, very confident move. I think slightly uphill towards the line there. That will give him the advantage. A big, strong bike rider making a bit of a comeback to the sport. You can see the gap there is the pink jersey. A little bit further back as well, Pataki, the Ciclamina jersey as well, caught out by the acceleration. But what a powerful sprint by the man in the blue jersey. Plenty of time to sit back and see where everybody finished. I think it was Verada getting himself second, and third place will go to Moreno De Biasi. So a nice advantage there for the man in the blue jersey there, the Azzurri competition. Magnus Bagstedt on the push-to-talk button of the radio, back to the TM. I've done it. Well, that's a bit more cash in the pocket, Bob.
That was a great sprint by Bagstedt. He did a fabulous time trial just a couple days ago, and he has done some good sprints. He finished fourth on a stage in the bunch gallop there just a few days ago. So Bagstedt capable of sprinting as well. He's a big, powerful rider. Moreno Di Biase, no answer whatsoever, and Bagstedt had a great lead out from the FACTA team. Doesn't matter, they were going so quickly that they caused a split in the field, and then all Bagstedt had to do was come right around and got maximum points for the Inter-Giro. So I think he'll have a pretty comfortable lead now. We got a couple more mountain days, so they might not be racing for that, even though the Inter-Giros try to come early before the mountains, give the sprinters a chance to contest those. It's great to see these guys racing so hard for the blue jersey in the Giro d'Italia this year.
It's always been a good, hard-fought composition over the years, this, but it'll be the first time it's ever been won by a Swedish rider, if that's the case. Phil Liggett of Australia did it once, but mostly it's been Italian victors over the years. 38 seconds. What's that mean, Paul?
That's his advantage now over De Biasi.
He gets half a minute for the win. And he was already leading by 8, was he?
He was already leading by 22 seconds, but he was 3 places ahead of De Biasi,
okay.
So he's extending his lead to 38 seconds, and he'll feel a lot more comfortable about that. But this is why the Inter-Giro has been put into the bike race. Very often, it's a hard competition that is well chased after, and then everybody tends to slow down just a little bit after the Inter-Giro and gives the chance then for the counter-attacks, which is what we're seeing right now.
Interesting move, this, Bob. The Colombian rider's just come up there, Laverde. And the other rider who's on is Zabala. I'm sorry, your pardon, it's Usano, Julian Usano, a Spanish and Colombian rider. You don't normally see those guys go out on the attack on a flat stage.
Not oftentimes, but in this Giro d'Italia, the Inter-Giros have been so hard fought that the natural regrouping of the peloton after a very hard split like that, we saw both Pataki and Simoni trailed off a little bit. They had no trouble catching back up, but in that hesitation, it gives a breakaway a chance to get up the front of the road there, and they've opened up a bit of a gap now.
They've got a nice gap over the main field, and everybody in that main field will just be relaxing for a fraction of kilometres to get themselves back into an organised state. Seiko and of course the team of Fassa Bortolo will be looking to see the position of Simoni and Pataki in the main field, and then once the race has started to form itself, they will decide whether or not to organise the chase on the front end of the main field. Luis Laverde was the man up here as well, and he's a man who so far this season, Phil, has had a pretty interesting season out on the international circuit, got himself a couple of wins under his belt. But at the front end of the main field, the control coming from Fassa Bortolo, they obviously want to try and keep this whole field together coming into town. Finish in Asti will give a chance for Alessandro Pataki to possibly make it 6 wins in this year's Giro. And after a rest day, he should have started to recover from that very nasty accident he had in the individual time trial.
Well, he's got today as his best shot, I think, for his final stage win. He could make it 6 and equal Cipollini's 6 of last year. 12 is the record, by the way, but that was pre-war by Alfredo Binda. And it's possibly another shot for him, Bob, on Saturday, although it's an undulating road. It may not be quite as easy for him.
Yes, also he had a chance yesterday during the rest day to recover, like you're saying, Paul, from those wounds he sustained in what he said to himself, a very stupid crash, perhaps the stupidest thing he's done on a bicycle. Looks like Julian Wynn is trying to get across to the front of the bike race as well there. They've been very, very aggressive. It's dead flat on the profile, so when you go up these little hills, it puts a really hard little effort into the legs that you're not expecting. It's kind of discouraging. But Pataki gets a chance today if they can keep it together. This is Alexis Rodriguez, so Kelme and the Pinsola rider must have been caught, or these guys are chasing from behind.
Garcia in the lead here, I think, Bob. He's wrongly captioned there by our friends in Italy.
Yes, exactly.
But
yes.
here he comes. This is Adolfo Garcia. And he's been joined by a Fassa rider now who's not going to help at all. He's going to hook up, sit on and wait for the arrival of the cavalry, because his man is Pataki, so he won't work. 3 riders and then the rest will join very quickly. Nice to see that they're trying to break the attention of the peloton, though, as we run into what is now the last kilometres of the stage today. We've gone through the Intergiro sprint, a win there for Magnus Bagstedt over Jans Verade and Moreno Di Biasi. So Bagstedt today has increased his overall lead in that competition as the crowd enjoy the hottest day so far in this year's Giro d'Italia, and they're still more or less all together. There's the attack by Garcia. Good to see the Spanish riders attacking on the flat. We'll take a break. The peloton still under pressure as they chase 1 or 2 more attackers now, trying to get off the front. This is very typical, Bob, at this stage of the race. There's always those that will give it a good shot and hope.
Yes, absolutely. You got to give it a go if you're going to get a chance to win. Most of these riders obviously don't have a chance to win in the sprint. Only a few of the sprinters have even been able to win a stage. Pataki, McEwen, and Baldato Cipollini splitting only 4 guys splitting all of the sprint stages. Here's Alexis Rodriguez. Just 1 victory as a professional so far in his career, and he's a good little bike racer. He's given it a try. He's off the front by a little bit, and these roads are a little bit heavier than I think the race profile would have said. They're much more than dead flat. There's quite a few rolling hills before the finish line into Asti, but I think that we'll see another sprint finish when we come to town. He has a very slim lead of only 11 seconds, and you can be rest assured that all the sprinters' teams will be doing big tempo on the front to contain any breakaways and lead out their leaders. Pataki doing a great Giro so far. He's got 5 stage wins. Now here's the inner Giro results. It looks like they're going to give Moreno Di Biasi 2nd place, although it seemed to us as if Jans Verade was clearly in front of him at the line. Maybe that will be reversed as well, because that is a very tight competition. So the judges out on the road not agreeing with the experts so far.
But they get the last shout, don't they?
They most definitely get the last say. So Moreno Di Biasi would probably not ask for a review of the tape, but Magnus Bagstedt might do well to ask for that. And if Jans Verade got 2nd place there, he would have taken a few seconds away from Di Biasi.
Well, here we are carrying on now as the kilometres are running out for the riders, and the town of Italy here on fete with all the nice pink balloons flying to cheer the Giro d'Italia past their front door. It's the biggest free show in Italy, this, as the riders now prepare to bring back the 1 escaper and try and make it a sprint. Angelo Furlander might well get into the picture again. He's never really... he may have lost his nerve a little bit after his crash, Bob, when he slammed into the fallen Galvez and Cipollini, 10 days ago almost now.
Yes, absolutely. That can be in the sprinters' milieu, and as they come into the finish line, there's a lot of bravado and there's a lot of incredibly courageous rides put in. You can see Cipollini leaning up against the riders as he follows his trains. He knows if he taps the brakes just for a moment, he will lose the back wheel of Lombardy. Then it's such a big effort to get back to the wheel of Lombardy for his lead out that a lot of the sting is taken out of the legs, and you can't sprint up to your highest level there. And maybe Furlan is going through the same thing. He's finished a 3-week tour, so he does have a lot of resistance as a bike racer. I'm sure there's still a lot of speed left in his legs for the rest of these stages in the Giro d'Italia, but he does need to get up in the front of the bike race to try to uncork one.
Well, Rodriguez still holding on to a slim advantage, just 12 seconds over the main field, which is starting to stretch itself out quite a lot right now. I think you have to say hats off to Kelme all the same, Bob. They started with just 8 riders at the start of the Giro d'Italia. They've always been out on the attack, and they seem to have brought here, Phil, a very young team, a team that they want to develop. And Kelme, over the years, has developed some very serious bike riders. And the sad thing for them is they don't have the budget to keep hold of those riders. Men like Botero, men like Heras, Rubiera, who now ride for the US Postal Service team. Once they've brought them up through the ranks, developed riders who can go out onto the international circuit, they get snapped up by the bigger teams, as this team we're looking at here right now, Fassa Bortolo. They in fact snapped up Aitor Gonzalez during the winter transfer season as well. Brusegin on the front here, by the way, has done an awful lot of pacemaking over the last 20 kilometres. The only thing in the back of his mind right now is to keep the pace high, make sure that that one man off the front end of the bike race doesn't get more than 15 or 20 seconds, because they feel that they've got the best sprinter on the block right now, the man who's got himself 5 stage victories so far in the Giro this year, Phil, and he may well be looking at trying to equal the record, post-war record as it might be, of stage wins in the Giro. That was set by 3 very famous bike riders: Roger de Vlaeminck, who always rode well at the Giro, Pepe Cerrone, who won the Giro on one occasion, and of course the super sprinter Freddy Mertens. They all got themselves 7 stage victories in one individual Giro d'Italia, and that's pretty impressive.
Very impressive. And along with Eddy Merckx, Freddy Mertens has once won 8 in the Tour de France. So they were good sprinters, no doubt about that. 20 kilometres to go. That's 12 miles from the finish. Now they're allowing this rider, I think, just to dangle at about 10 or 11 seconds, because while he sits off the front, it preoccupies the chasers and stops the next group attacking. So they won't sweep him up unless they have to for a couple of kilometres yet, but there's no way he's going to stay away to the finish, that's for sure, because this is becoming another day for Alessandro Petacchi. There is a hint, I suppose, that other riders can beat him, but so far he seems to be getting those sprints timed to perfection. There's the average speed for the day, 26.5 miles an hour, 42.25 kilometres per hour. That will keep us well on a record Giro d'Italia pace.
Well, I think Bob will also be looking for his favourite sprinter of the moment, the man with a very good future when Mario Cipollini decides to retire, Daniel Bennati. And I think, Bob, as we get closer to the finish, we will see Lombardi trying to get it right. The only way that Bennati is going to start winning races is to go through the motions on every stage like this, get the team to sort out the lead out for him, and try and make sure that he gets the jump at the right place. You can see just off the front, Rodriguez is surviving, but not very much more than by about 50 seconds right now. And the pace is not all that high for the moment, as we're still looking for the outskirts of the finishing city.
Yes, it's a very good point you make, that you do have to go through the motions when you don't have the legs, when you don't have the fitness, or you've become tired in the bike race. You still have to try for the wins, so that when you do have the legs, everything goes right. So that's one thing that Mario Cipollini has: supreme confidence in himself. He knows that when his legs are right, he's going to win stages, so he always puts his team on the front. He always contests a sprint. We saw that throughout the first week of the Giro. He couldn't quite come up with the goods, but he knew that if he kept trying, eventually he would get the win. He did tie the Binder record, and then he went ahead and broke it the next day. So you got to have confidence as well as legs and fitness. Bennati is going through all of that as a very young professional now, so I think he is a big star in the sprints for the future.
And I think as well the important thing, Phil, is going through the motions like that makes it an automism for the team. At the end of the day, when it comes down to the last 400-500 metres for Mario Cipollini and Giovanni Lombardi, they do not have to discuss anything. Each rider automatically knows what the other needs to be done. And that's why the young Bennati has to go through the motions as we go into the final 10 kilometres or so.
Vashtia there talking to his teammates, surprisingly having no problems holding on to the tail of the peloton after his long breakaway earlier today. He was caught on the climb of La Rosetta, wiped out by a flying Freddy Gonzalez and Fortunato Baglioni, who fought out the King of the Mountains there. Well, the Intergiro also behind us, a win for Bagstedt, officially over DiBiase and Zerada. The field is still working out how to deal with Rodriguez, but they've still got time on their side. About 17 kilometres to ride before we're downtown in Asti for the big sprint. Flying wheels now, the 138 riders in today's stage at the Giro d'Italia, because they've just picked up Rodriguez and we're all back in the pack. I thought she'd be more happier than that, wouldn't you, Paul?
I think so. I'm not sure she's realised how much excitement is going to come into town in a few moments' time. The kilometres are now beginning to tick by rather rapidly as we see the banner indicating 15 kilometres to go. Still a lot of work being done here, Bob, by Bruchegin. He won't be part of the lead-out train, I shouldn't think, this afternoon, because he's been sat on the front for around about 30 kilometres or 18 miles. Interesting to note the national champion of Norway at the back there. He's got himself a stage victory under the belt. Maybe having a difficult time over the last week of this bike race, because it's in this last week that the body really does start to hurt. Number 3, Angelo Furlan, he'll be looking for the win at the end of the day. He's been there and thereabouts, but he was involved in that very dramatic crash that took out Mario Cipollini, and it does take a few days. Normally takes a few days to get over a crash, but it certainly didn't take Petacchi.
Well, Petacchi is such a fantastic Giro so far. He didn't go down in that crash, but he took himself out so hard in the time trial. We were amazed he was able to even start the next stage. He threatened to drop out overnight because the contusions were so deep and so extensive on his back, hips, his elbow, knees. He's all bandaged up all over back, practically his whole left side of his body and his whole back is really cut up. But he came up with the goods big time the day before the rest day, and he had to dig very, very deep into his reserves, and he was in so much pain he couldn't even raise his hands at the finish line. He reached for the sky to raise both of them. It was a very clear win, but when he got about shoulder length, he had to put them back down because it started to pull on the cuts on his back. And so very courageous ride and a great win. He wanted to honor the Ciclamino jersey by winning a stage in the Purple Points jersey.
Incidentally, one of the early retirements from the Tour, the Belgian rider Rick Verbrugge, he is getting better and looking forward to the Tour de France, and we'll update you on all those things. Come on board into our chat room and ask us what you like, and we'll update you on what we think we know anyway. OLNTV.com. The chat room tonight starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be there, all three of us, ready to answer your questions until 8 p.m. and then you can turn us off and turn on OLN and watch the prime show programme of the Giro d'Italia. The Factor team then, having a wonderful tour, the first time they've ever ridden a 3-week stage race. It's a fairly new team on the block, and they've come here to prove a point, and I think they've done that. They've had one stage win, as Paul has said, with Kurt Arvidsson of Norway. They've got the lead, and it's getting to look like a strong lead by Magnus Bagstedt in the Inter-Giro competition. So, and Scott Sunderland riding very well as an overall contender, away from the top 10, but even so, he's still right up there trying for a top 20 finish.
Looks like Frances de Jeux are going to be a lot more organised today as well. You can see all the clubs on the back of the jerseys there. The white jersey leading them out at the moment was number 77, Frédéric Guédon, former winner of Paris-Roubaix. The oldest man in the team here. The team has been sent by Marc Madio, the former Paris-Roubaix winner himself, the team manager now of fdjeux.com, to try and give them some experience in this big 3-week stage race. And it is so important to ride a race like this, to learn just exactly how the body will handle the 3 weeks in the saddle that is thrown up at them. They've only lost one rider so far. In fact, that was Nicolas Fritsch. He went very early on. But Sandy Cassar is the man they'll be looking to try and get the win for today. It's his birthday. Eisel, number 76, he's had a fantastic Giro d'Italia so far, with many places in the top 3 and 4. And of course, we've been following the progress of Bradley Wiggins, where's number 79. He's a great young bike rider, British rider. He's a former world champion on the track and a very experienced team pursuiter, and of course rides very well in the individual pursuit as well. We'll see how he handles this 3-week bike race, but I think, Phil, this was laid down the foundations for Bradley Wiggins, and he'll be happy to have got himself so far through this big event.
He certainly will. To look back in Milan at having ridden the race, he'll be a changed rider from then onwards. He's proved a point to himself. He's got medals at the Commonwealth Games, which is the same as the American Pan American Games. He's got medals at the Olympics and at the World Championships, but all on the track, as Paul has said. He wants to prove a point now he can ride the long road races, and I still think we might see a ride out of him before the end of the race. So the peloton, as they run down now, looking for the 10 kilometres to go banner. We're inside 15. The Fassa Bortolo have been helped up here by the Gerolsteiner team.
At the front end of the main field, it's pretty dangerous right now. You might just have seen a few moments ago that yellow motorbike picking its way through that small railway bridge. It was indicating with the flag to the riders that it was a dangerous point on the course as the road narrowed to go under that small bridge, just to let the riders see visually that they're approaching a moment of danger. Good to see Gerolsteiner getting on the front, thinking about getting one of their men up for the sprint. But the man who is floating around at the front end of the peloton there, number 66, the Ciclamino jersey, that is Alessandro Petacchi, 5 stage wins so far, and probably got a lot more bandages than he's got stage wins, Bob.
Yes, it's incredible to see him still racing so hard and so fast in the final sprint when he was really sore. He had a day off yesterday to recover a little bit, some of the stiffness coming into the muscles after a big crash like that, as well as all of the cuts to his skin. His team has been at the front of the bike race, controlling the tempo, so he'll feel a really strong obligation to repay all of those efforts, and we'll see a big lead out from the Fassa Bortolo riders for their man Alessandro Petacchi. We'll see what Dominic Valconce can do also. Giovanni Lombardi doing the perfect lead out for Bonatti. Bonatti just not quite having enough strength, wound up that sprint in 4th place. So we'll see exactly how the sprint unfolds. I'm surprised to see the Gerolsteiner team on the front of the bike race, but maybe they will pull one of their men up in the sprint as well.
Well, here we are, 10 kilometres from the end, 6 miles to go to the finish. And that'll take the riders about 8 or 9 minutes, I would think, at these sorts of speeds. Maybe they're trying to get Robert Forster up for a stage win. He's a very good sprinter, but he hasn't really pierced the armour of the top 5 or 6 finishers. So I'm afraid our satellite's not behaving just at the moment. Well, there we are, we're back again now as we look down at the leaders of the peloton. And the pacemaking here being set by Gerolsteiner, and this is Gianni Farazine. As they decided it's time to take a drink and maybe let somebody else do the pacemaking. Oh, he's not even in the lead as we go back up towards the leaders. Anyway, as I say, we're inside 10 kilometres to go. We'll try and solve our little picture problems, and we'll take a very short break. Rejoin us for the finish. And welcome back as the peloton all together, 7 kilometres now from the finish, and a variety of teams at the front. Fassa Bortolo not really massing in total there. As we look now at just the one rider, Bushagin, still trying to hold pace at the front, Bob.
I think what's more interesting, Bob, there is the fact that Garzelli's team have moved to the front. They've been queuing up to try and put Garzelli back into a position to reduce his 158 deficit, because he is the kind of rider, now that the top sprinters have disappeared from this bike race, who can get himself into the top 3 on the flat stages.
Well, he has definitely got into there a bunch of times on the sprint so far, even winning a stage against none other than Alessandro Petacchi when he got his stage win there. Not on the Terminillo, but the other stage that he did win. So he'll try to get some time back from this man right here in the pink jersey, Gilberto Simoni. He's promised not to give up, not to surrender until the last meter of the race in Milano. So he's fighting on to the finish. And now we can see his teammates from Vini Caldirola all over the front of the bike race trying to do a big lead out for him. Behind, though, there you see some of the Domina Vacanze riders starting to move into the picture. They've probably had some discussions. We'll see if they're still confident in their man, Daniele Benatti, and try to lead him out.
Well, we see Phil wondering what part of Italy we're in. We're actually not too far away from Torino, and in fact, if the riders kept riding after the finish today for about 50 or 60 miles, they would find themselves way up in the French Alps. And we are getting up to a very beautiful part of the country, the Po Valley, which is where we are not tomorrow evening as we go up into the big mountain stages. It's interesting, I think, to see that Garzelli is not going to give up at all in this Giro d'Italia. He will do everything he can to pull himself just that little bit closer to the man who leads the bike race, Gilberto Simoni. He is attentive, and it shows that he's riding a lot better as this race progresses.
Well, it's strange to see Fortunato Balliani setting the pace at the front there, maybe trying to encourage Moreno Di Biasi to go for the stage win today, as he made a bit of a mess of the Intergiro sprint at 5 kilometres to go. But I've noted that Giovanni Lombardi has taken the back wheel of Alessandro Petacchi, and that Angelo Furlan has moved up on the outside of them both. So they're seeing each other as the likely men to contend the sprint for sure.
Well, the team of Domina Vacanze have still not got themselves organised. This has been their recipe over the last couple of stages. They've waited till the last 3 or 4 kilometres to go, and then they've organised a big train on the front. But Factor there, you can see on the right-hand side, also organising themselves. There's the national champion of Norway, Arvidsson, up into about 3rd place in that line of Factor riders. He's looking for the opportunity to try and get himself another stage victory. This is a very tense moment for the sprinters, because they want to be as close to the front as possible, but without actually having to put their faces into the wind, because if you catch the wind at 50, 55 kilometres an hour, it really does feel as if somebody's hit you in the face with a hammer, Bob.
Yes, absolutely. You need to conserve your energy as much as you can, depend on your teammates, and follow the forward rotation as it naturally comes around the peloton. These riders will start to swing off the front of the bike race. Then the sprinter team will come to the front. It looks like Roberto Conti there on the far side, very experienced bike racer, and now one of the top domestiques for Marco Pantani.
Always pretty happy when he comes to the eve of the mountain stages. He's looking to try and get up alongside Marco Pantani tomorrow as we go to a big mountain top finish. Here you can see the movement in the main field. They've the Gold Pack team moving forward there. They'll be thinking about trying to get their man Palumbo towards the front of the main peloton. But I have a feeling as we get closer, Phil, to the finishing line, we will see the organisation coming from Domina Vacanze. They've got a very good chance with their youngster, Daniele Benatti, just 22 years of age, already with a very interesting win under his belt at the Tour of the Mediterranean in the early part of the season. But Petacchi will certainly try and get himself another win if he can today, after a rest day yesterday.
Garosa is setting the pace now, the Italian for his team leader, Garzelli. And here comes the train from Domina Vacanze now as they try to line up Benatti for a victory this time around. Ongarato passing through just ahead there on the tail of the group. We're looking here at Giampaolo Mondini. Now, they seem to be getting themselves well organised. If Mario Cipollini's watching this, he must be taking great pride in his team, working so well without him being in the race.
Well, they're a great team. They're well drilled. They know just exactly what to do. But I think it is interesting to note that there, right on the wheel of Pataki, is the man who's been a former Olympic points champion, Giovanni Lombardi. He's in ideal position behind Pataki there. The team are going to give a superb lead out right now. It's good to have a strong team like this in a bike race, Phil, towards the end of these stages, because at least it keeps the sprint fairly organised. You can see moving up there as well, Biagio Conti as well from Formaggio Pinzola. We've not seen very much of him in the Giro. He's a man who used to be a lead out for Mario Cipollini in the very old days.
And can win in his own right there. Maybe that's the reason that Formaggi are trying to get to the front. Here comes the train for Jimmy Casper, and there he is, number 73. He's the man who finished second, and it's his birthday today, remember, and it would be wonderful to win a stage in the Giro d'Italia. I'd have to look back to the record books. The French don't win many stages these days in this foreign tour to them. And Française de Jeu trying to get something out of this race as we go into the last, what will be the last 4 days of the event. There's the pink jersey now, and Casper's got right in front of him, shoulder to shoulder. And in fact, Alessandro Pataki taking a look at Casper there to see who dares to get on my teammate's back wheel, and retakes his place in second behind his teammate.
Well, Casper made a mistake there at 2 kilometres to go. His teammates moved to the front, sorting out a train for him to build him up there in an ideal position, and he lost the wheel, and now he's battling to try and get the wheel of the man just in front of Pataki. Look at this, shoulder to shoulder. Pataki, although he's been down on a couple of occasions, will not give an inch at all, and rides up alongside and says, look, my teammates are leading me out, excuse me, just go to one side. The man he wanted to stay on the tail of, by the way, was Marco Velo. 1.5 kilometres to go right now, Phil. It's going to be a bit chaotic, this sprint this afternoon. Denardi are moving up as well, maybe to try and get their man Palumbo in with a chance, but their team does not have the firepower of the team of Mario Cipollini, who are leading out now for their man Benati.
Well, it looks like Lombardi has taken the wheel of Alessandro Pataki, and this is going to be very interesting. I think he's going to try for the sprint himself.
Into the last 1,000 metres of the race today, and this is really a pure sprinter's finish. There's no tricky ones. It's a straight run at the line here, and it is an excellent finish for the man with pure speed, but it does mean you have to get it exactly right. There's Furlan down there, still dodging in and out the wheels now as they try desperately to get on turn. I think it's Org who's got through there in 4th place, but the pink jersey again perfectly poised here. Casper is also still in the frame. Now, can this be number 6? There's 3 of them just opening the gap. A perfect lead out once again for Alessandro Pataki, and it's all down to those legs, because you can never say his team gets it wrong these last few days. He could be delivered to the line here. He's waiting to make his move now. Here comes the rush on the outside, and that's Eisel trying to take over from Casper as they come on the left of our picture. This is the final dash now. Alessandro Pataki looks as though his legs are too quick for anyone. His team thinks so. Zerada tries, fails on the line. It is number 6, and Jan Zerada has to be content with 2nd place.
Well, Zerada came up very quickly indeed there, but that was a long lead out by Pataki. There he is, unbelievable. This man, we thought just a couple of days ago, Bob, was going to retire from the Giro d'Italia. He would have been fine to retire. 4 wins under his belt, a very successful event. He did not want to. He's the leader of the points competition. He battled back to get himself that incredible victory number 5. Now today it's number 6.
Incredible lead out. He led that sprint out from an incredible long ways out. He jumped hard and no one could come around him. Look at how close it was. Zerada fighting him all the way down to the line. But Pataki, with the lunge, gets another great win, number 6 for him.
Well, there it is, 6 wins. That one was tight, but it was clear enough for the judges to say he's now won 6 stages. Zerada 2nd, Lombardi himself taking 3rd. We'll come back with the presentations and update you in the Tour of Italy with number 6 for Pataki. Well, we're looking now at a reenactment of the sprint finish here on the 17th stage of the Giro d'Italia, and Alessandro Pataki going on the left there. And he had to lead out a long way, and as the line approached, it looked as though he may be fading because Jan Zerada was coming quite quickly. But on the line, it wasn't quite quick enough, not even a push forward of the bicycle wheels. So he's got his 6th win, and indeed his 12th win of the season. 6 of them coming in stages of the Giro d'Italia. It was a clean victory, that one, Paul. Great sprint.
Well, he has been the most prolific winner of bike races on the circuit this year, with a total tally now of 12 wins. But I think the 6 that he's got here at the Giro d'Italia will certainly be the toughest ones that he's got so far. A long sprint for him, and in fact everybody was battling for his wheel there because they knew that this man now is setting himself up as the new fastest sprinter on the block.
Well, he's got about 33, 34 spins still to win to equal Cipollini's record, of course. But we're now looking at Pataki win. But tomorrow he won't be winning the stage because we're back into the high mountains. It's a really tough day tomorrow. It includes the Cima Coppi climb for the high point of the Tour at 2,366 metres. It is going to be a vicious day, and a day that Simone will either confirm himself as the winner of this Giro or he will be challenged by Stefano Garzelli. There's the route for you. A nice pleasant start to the day. Then it gets a little bit ugly as we start the Montemaro di Quenio, the Colla di Esicni, and that is the Cima Coppi climb. And then a little bit low, but only by about 100 metres, we go over the Colle Samperi before we climb up to Chianali for the big finish. And it's a hilltop finish. It's the fourth of 5. And there's still one more to come after that. We'll be live, of course, for what will be a memorable day at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you can't be with us then, join us at prime time for 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, and we'll give you all the highlights of this day in the Dolomites. It's going to be a really good day. And we're just 4 days now from the end of the Giro d'Italia. Don't forget too, we're in the chat room tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Come and have a chat with me, Phil Liggett, and Bob and Paul, and we'll do our best to answer all of your questions. There's a little information for you on that. 7 p.m. Eastern, just before we show you our prime time show this evening at 8. We'll be in the room for an hour, so don't leave us all there by ourselves. Come and have a chat with us. Well, a remarkable day for one Alessandro Pataki. He is a rider now who is only one short of equaling the likes of Roger de Vlaming, one of the few riders, and Freddie Martins, who've won 7 stages in a Giro. He's got realistically one more chance to at least equal them. I don't think we can expect him to get 8 now. The hills won't suit him, and neither will the final day's time trial. But he could on Saturday get win number 7 if things break his way.
Well, he will try for that, Phil, but what he has to do is try and survive the 2 big mountain stages that are to come, because those 2 mountain stages will go over to the challengers to try and win this bike race overall. And the 2 names that it conjures up immediately are the man who leads now, Gilberto Simoni, and of course the man who has been his closest challenger, Stefano Garzelli. It could also be a day to see the renaissance once again towards the end of this Giro of a certain Marco Pantani.
And tomorrow, Bob, Garzelli to fight back or Simone to put the top hat on it?
Well, I think the profile will suit Simone perfectly. He's going to try to get some more time on Garzelli. He's promised to attack all the way up to Chianelli. Also, the very prestigious Cima Coppi will go over the Esicni climb and the Sampere, so a very heavy-duty stage tomorrow. Perhaps not the single most difficult climb in the race course, as we see some of the replays of the wet days, and we're going to have a real battle tomorrow.
So, as we watch the highs and lows, we're signing off by saying there's our website address, olntv.com. We're in the chat room tonight. Lots more information on the website if you come and visit us. We hope you're enjoying the coverage. Tomorrow we're back in the mountains and we'll see the battle again for the pink jersey. Remember that Simone, when he won the Tour a couple of years ago, wore the jersey only for 8 days. Well, he's worn it for 8.
All over this race. There are a lot of the big names in the top 10 in serious difficulty right now, and they're trying to pull themselves back up to the attack, which has come initiated by Gilberto Simoni, the man in the pink jersey.
Well, this has been a very vicious course. They hit the snow line on the climb of the Sampere, which is probably at about 7,000 feet they found the snow. It fell overnight. It was only a smattering, made the conditions quite difficult. They've taken a few risks on the way down. They're repairing those risks at the moment. Now, Pantani, Garzelli, Vladimir Belli are in a chase group. The pink jersey group was down to only 12 riders at one point, and then, because of the impetus of Simone, he tore that group to shreds on the climb of the Sampere. And he finally, only Frigo could hold his wheel, and he reached the leaders. Now, at the moment, 4 riders in a position here to approach the final climb together. We're approximately 32 kilometres from the finish. Now, I can't believe how fast that they've covered the course today, keeping this Giro d'Italia on a record schedule. They covered 46.1 kilometres in the first hour of racing, so they weren't obviously afraid of the mountains in front. We've still got the finishing climb to come. We'll take a break. Himself a new toy in the back room, and he's going to show us where all the riders are. Go on, Bob.
All right. Let's take a look at the first climb of the day, the first big mountain, Cima Coppi. Over the top, fast Freddy Gonzalez with Zavalla. Simone's group right about here. He would go up to these riders. They would descend. Simone put in an attack right here, put Pantani, Garzelli, Zampieri, Rumsauce, and Georg Tochnik and Popovic all in trouble. Down the other side, this big breakaway we had early in the stage got up about here before Simoni came across to them, went over the top. At the next climb, the Sampere, it was an entirely different group at the front of the bike race. And then you saw Simoni, Georg Tochnik, Popovic just catching them at the top, and a resurgent Dario Frigo coming into that group. Now they're on this descent right here, and Popovic is almost down to the bottom of it. He's down here by himself. Simoni's chasing, and Pantani, Garzelli are still up here, way off the back.
And thank you, Bob. And as you finish that, we now switch to these live pictures and see that Marco Pantani looks as though he's had a bicycle change with a teammate there. We only just caught a glimpse of that, but I think it was Pantani.
That was Pantani, stopped at the side of the road. He did have a teammate in that group with him a short while ago, and he may well have gone off the road. The big problem for all of these riders, you can see that is Pantani on the ground. He really went down pretty hard, and it looks as if Garzelli has gone down with him. Pantani looking very stiff and sore indeed, and he will lose himself an awful lot of time, Phil, if he can't get up. This is the problem. The big problem today is the cold on these descents. A lot of riders not even able to brake properly, and I think that's what's caused the problem here with Marco Pantani, who started the day in 10th place in the overall classification, and he looks as if he may well have had a problem there with his collarbone because he's in serious pain.
He is in pain here. He's had a very nasty fall. There's a few rocks in the ground there, I think, and I think it was Garzelli we just caught a glimpse of moving off safely, at least getting going. But Pantani, to me, looks as though he may not continue there, Bob, which is rather sad to say the least.
Very sad. You can see his bike there. It has those carbon deep section rims. One thing about the carbon rims, they don't work nearly as well in the wet. The braking is not as good. Pantani in a lot of pain. He's taken his helmet off, so his Giro d'Italia might be over on this very treacherous descent. A lot of snow at the top of the mountain. The hands get frozen. You can't even put the brakes on very well. So a tough day. Pantani seems to be in. There's his team car now. He's going to come by. He seemed to be holding his knee for a moment. He's in a lot of pain right now. The rest of the bike race has gone up the road. He knows that he's losing his top 10 position on GC, and he might be out of the race at the end of the day.
Well, that's really sad to see. Sorry about the picture breakup. We're in very bad atmospheric conditions here now. If it's not snowing, it is in fact raining quite badly. It is very cold on the top of these mountains. We've got back to our ground camera there while the helicopter's gone on to try and find the leaders of the race. That in itself must be quite a skilled job to locate these cyclists in amongst the trees right now. They're spread across the Alps here. But it looks to me as though Marco Pantani is not going to continue, and that is sad because this man was destined for a top 10 finish for sure. He was right up amongst the front runners, has been all day. He didn't quite hold the wheel as Simoni, Frigo and Georg Tochnik, but he was with the best of them, including Garzelli. But you can see his arm has taken. I've got a feeling he may have hurt his arm more seriously than we think here.
Well, he's in serious pain there. I think he went over the top, and it may well be that Garzelli came up from behind and hit him as he was actually on the ground. In fact, he would have made a pretty good operation if he'd stayed on his bike today, because he would have already moved up one place with the abandon of Francesco Casagrande. I haven't seen a lot of Sergei Honchar either, the man who leads the Dinardi Kolpak team. He would therefore have probably moved up to 7th or 8th place in the overall classification.
Yeah.
Very sad for a man who was riding himself into good form in this year's Giro d'Italia and perpetrating rumours that he might switch across to Team Bianchi and try and get himself a ride in the Tour de France. This will put paid to those dreams, I would think.
Well, it will if his arm is in fact broken. He'd never get it ready in time for the Tour. On the other hand, it might be an inspiration. If it's only a minor injury causing retirement, he might get back in time. Who knows? You can see conditions are not getting any better as we continue here on the descent, heading towards the final climb of the day. I think we're with the leading group, and I'm not absolutely certain where we are at the moment. This is Sabaliauskas, I think, who's with us. It might be Specialetti, though, because both of those Seiko riders have been up amongst the front runners. As we've gone back here to Marco Pantani, a little flush of water over the injured left arm. Not looking good. He's clearly in no mood at the moment to find his bike and continue in the Giro d'Italia, so he could well be the next rider to abandon. We've had 4 go already today. Sadly, Marco Pantani might be the 5th. There's the leaders. Frigo is there chasing.
He was in there with Len Franchi, who was in an earlier break further up the hill. Simoni in a bit of trouble right now, but he did drop Garzelli and Pantani on the descent. Georg Tochnik is trying to stay on the wheel. They're chasing Frigo, who is chasing Popovic.
Well, I think you made a good point earlier, Bob, because in fact, once Gilberto Simoni does get to the climb is not as difficult as the other two big peaks they've been over this afternoon. His body will start to warm up again and he'll be able to get the blood circulation going. The difficult thing as well about going down a descent like this when your fingers start to get frozen is the fact is that the gear shifters are on the brake levers nowadays, and that makes it difficult to go into the corners in the right gear ratio, and that also could have been a problem that was throwing Marco Pantani onto the ground, not able to change gears correctly. This is what it looks like at the finish line, and it really is completely different to the weather conditions not more than 25 kilometers away from here at the top of that final climb of the day, the Saint-Père. In fact, this is only the third time the Giro d'Italia has been here to finish. 1993 was Marco Saligari, but in 1995 when Pascal Richard won here, Phil, it was actually a race that was shortened because of bad weather conditions, and we certainly almost had that today, because on the first 2 kilometers of the descent of the Saint-Père, the riders had about an inch of snow on the road.
This is the front of the bike race. Popovic looking behind him. He put a furious descent into the Col de Saint-Pierre, and now Frigo is clawing his way back to him. Dario Frigo, you consider the Fossa Bortolo rider. He did a great climb, stayed right with Simoni. He seemed to be in a little bit of difficulty, but he stayed right with him. Then he put in a really good descent, but Popovic the best descent. But now we have the finishing climb here. It looks like some of the life has come back into Simoni's body. Georg Tochnik just trying to stay on the wheel. Simoni knows that he's dropped Garzelli, that Popovic is up the road. He has got to put in a bit of a move right now himself. He promised to attack today. He's been true to his word, flying on the climbs, a little bit of trouble on the descent, but now it seems he seems to be racing better. He will want to close the gap to Frigo, and Frigo wants to close the gap to this man, Popovic, who's right in front of the road. Here comes Frigo right there. It looks like he'll make the junction here pretty soon, and if Simoni can catch them, that's a fantastic foursome all the way to the finish. Georg Tochnik also going to be moving up today on GC.
Absolutely, every man for himself now. Georg Tochnik was 32 years of age 4 days ago in the Giro, and if he can hang on to Simoni, then he'll certainly finish up probably as high as 4th overall in the race. He's not a long way out of the hunt. His best ever finish in the Giro was last year when he finished 7th overall. This race is going to be a real battle on the final climb, and we'll be there to see it. We'll just take a short break. And welcome back. We're looking here at the leader and indeed the winner-elect of this year's Giro d'Italia, Gilberto Simoni. He's just put in a couple of accelerations here to try and rid himself of Georg Tochnik, who's sitting behind him and not willing to help. I don't think he can, in all honesty. Up front, Popovic has been joined by Dario Frigo, and those two riders still ahead of Simoni. Absolute chaos today because the riders spread right across the Alps, and as far as you know, Marco Pantani is still sitting on the roadside on the previous climb after his crash, while Garzelli, helped by Steve Zampieri, his teammate, is trying to race back into the action.
Well, you can see Garzelli got up very quickly from that crash, Phil, and I think what probably happened was it was Pantani who went down first. Coming round the corner, Garzelli probably rammed straight into him and caused his injuries to be a little bit more worse than if he'd just gone off the road. This is a very difficult moment for the man in the pink jersey there. You can see he's trying to pull himself back up to the two attackers, who are Frigo and, of course, Popovic, who is doing a superb day of work this afternoon. Could even be moving himself up into second place in the overall standings. He was 2 minutes and 7 seconds behind Stefano Garzelli at the start of the day, but Garzelli has gone down in a very dramatic crash. He's injured, I think, to the hip, and also very obviously we can see he's injured to the elbow as well. He will have a very difficult last 15 kilometers, and to compound the problem he's got, those last 15.5 kilometers are all uphill.
Yeah, we've started the climb now, Bob. Popovic, though, had already put in his attack long before Garzelli had attacked. So clearly Popovic was looking for that 2 minutes 7 seconds he was behind. There's the situation right now. It is 3 minutes and 5 seconds, which means that this 23-year-old is now in second place, Paul. Remarkable, really.
Absolutely. Well, we have to see if Stefano Garzelli can recover. You can see the crash problem that he's got there. He's covered in mud. The knee and front of his shin there are covered with blood. The grazing from going off the road on a dramatic descent off the second highest climb of the day, the Col de Saint-Pierre. And right now he's got a teammate alongside him, and I think he's in an awful amount of difficulty. This had appeared to be a dream return to the top of the sport for him. Second place in the overall classification, the pink jersey, and right now he's got to struggle to try and keep himself in a podium position. There is Gilberto Simoni, who right now is doing a superb job. He's not panicked at all, Phil. He wasn't able to stay with the other two attackers on the descent, but I think before we get a little bit further up the road, we will see the bike race leader, Gilberto Simoni, make contact with the attackers as we go inside now of 15 kilometres to go.
Well, looking down there, as you can see, the roads are still wet. The conditions are most unpleasant today. It's to be expected in the Tour of Italy. We've had stages cancelled in the past because of the snow. Bob, looking there briefly at Gilberto Simoni, a much different bike rider in style than he is to Garzelli, isn't he?
Yes, Garzelli is quite a bit different in his position. You can see he's very slumped over the bike there, a long ways behind the saddle to the bottom bracket of the bike. Here's Garzelli's position. If you juxtapose that with Simoni, you can see the position of a pure climber. You can see how aerodynamic and powerful he is. Look at Simoni, a lot more upright, wide open in the lungs, better for breathing, not quite as strong on the flats, but much better in the mountains. And he's racing right up here into the sunshine while Garzelli is back in the rain.
Thank you, Bob. We even got the sunshine, but I'm afraid it's only on the telestrator, because out on the roads today, although having said that, there's a shadow popped down on the floor now, so perhaps the clouds are going to roll away. Funnily enough, we do know we've had shots of the finishing banner. The sun is shining on top of the mountain. They had a thunderstorm there about 45 minutes ago. It's passed through and the sun has come out, so maybe they will get a pleasant ending. But the riders who are left in the Giro d'Italia today are spread over a long time, probably the best part of 1 hour.
Well, we are receiving reports that Marco Pantani, having sat at the side of the road for an hour or two by the race doctor, is trying to get onto his machine again and to try and finish the bike race. But those are unconfirmed. On days like this in bike racing, when there is so much going on, it is very difficult to get information from back down on the course. There is so much chaos. This was a stage that we did expect to turn the whole of the bike race upside down. This man at the moment, for the first time in a mountain stage, has been put somewhat on the defensive. The man who's doing the great job is the young 23-year-old, and that's Jaroslav Popovic. He was actually dropped initially by Simoni on the climb of the San Per. He made an incredible comeback on the first few kilometres of the descent, Phil. Took a lot of risks, went out on the front. He now leads this man on the road by over 3 minutes.
Well, just take a look at this man suffering, and he's been up in second place. He's lost his second place currently after all of this time to Popovic, who is probably unaware that Garzelli had that rather ugly crash with Marco Pantani. Pantani a long way behind now, but Garzelli fighting to hold a podium place in Milan. We'll take another break. Rejoin. Alongside Popovic is the pink jersey of Gilberto Simoni and Dario Frigo, but they have shaken off Georg Tochnig, who is just behind. So these are the three new leaders now, about 13 kilometres to the summit.
Well, I think the most sensible rider here right now is Dario Frigo. This is the kind of climb that would suit him. It's not such a steep climb, which gives the advantage to the pure mountain climbers. It gives the advantage to a man who is an exceptionally strong bike rider, and Dario Frigo certainly is that. We've seen him on many occasions using huge gears to keep in contact with the climbers in the mountains. Georg Tochnik is also doing a fantastic ride this afternoon. He started the day in 7th position. He's already definitely up into 6th. Now, if he gets back into the leading group of 3, I could see him being in the 4th or 5th position by the end of the day. The big revelation over the last 2 years at the Giro, though, is the man caught in the middle there, Jaroslav Popovic, 23 years of age. As Bob said, he was 12th last year in the Giro d'Italia. This year, I have a very strong suspicion he's going to finish on the podium, and very likely in 2nd place behind the man in the pink jersey there, Gilberto Simoni.
Very dangerous situation right now for Stefano Garzelli. You have these 3 riders on great form, making a huge raid. They're in front of the bike race. They're all working together. Garzelli way behind them. Last check he got to Popovic was 3 minutes and 5 seconds with 15 kilometers to go. Garzelli has one teammate with him, Eddie Mazzoleni, who's doing as much as he can, but Garzelli himself is going to have to start to turn through and try to close the gap. Georg Tochnig at the moment caught in between those 2 groups on his own. That's a place where you don't want to be when the 3 strongest guys in the race are all working together in the front.
Tocznik has been a professional, Phil, for a fair time, since 1994, and he's always promised to be a man who could ride well in the overall classifications. We're getting confirmation there of the time deficit of Marco Pantani, which indicates that he is definitely back in the bike race. That is a courageous move for that man. He was very painful at the side of the road there. 11 minutes or so, he loses high place in the overall classification, but you know what? He will gain the esteem once more of the crowds.
Well, he's lost more time in that one tumble today, and he's lost in 18 days of racing. He was only 10 minutes behind overall. So add on 11 more now, I'm afraid, for Marco Pantani. If he can just get to the finish, he's still going to have a respectable position and the sympathy of everybody for that nasty fall. And I think we're going to say the same too about Garzelli. He looks to be in pain and is troubled down the road. He's now 3 minutes on the last check behind these leaders. We suspect now he may even be 4, because of all days, he's going up the mountain today.
Well, this corner the riders at the front of the bike race are about to take right now, this slight right-hander. It's 13.5 kilometres from here to the summit, and this is where it starts to get just a little bit more difficult. You can see Simoni now, I think, Bob, slightly more on the defensive. He doesn't have to worry too much about what's happening behind him, but he may well have to worry a small amount about Jaroslav Popovic, the man in front in the red shorts, because this kid is absolutely on fire.
Yes, Simoni needs to be very careful right now and not overextend himself on the bottom slopes of this climb and get into oxygen debt. He needs to mark Popovic. He has a 4-minute 5-second cushion on Popovic. He might even do well if Popovic is on really good form to let him go for a while and reestablish his rhythm. Depends on how he's feeling. Frigo, the size of the gear he was using across the flats there before the climb, that false flat before the steep parts of this climb, was absolutely incredible. Just tanking along there. Now we see Tocznik getting up onto the climb himself, but Simoni is in a great spot right now. He's surrounded by the 2 strongest guys besides himself in the race. Here's a little chase group. That's Pelizzotti. Zabalyakis is on his wheel. This is a ways down the mountain, and that looks like Andrea Noe coming through. He's our 4th rider on GC at the moment, but I think that he's in trouble of losing some time as well on Georg Tocznik, who's way up the road from these guys.
Yep, there's still a lot of cards to play here on this climb. 13 kilometres to go. Noe could still be a man at the top of the overall classification if he can keep his legs. There's the man, though, in the driving seat. No doubt about that. We'll take a break. Popovic, to use Paul's phrase, has popped.
He certainly has, and as we would say in Swahili, it's tuanana. We'll see you later on, because he's going to have a very hard ride. And what he has to do now is make sure that he doesn't go too far into the red zone. He has to ride a sensible ascent right now, because he's still in the position of climbing up into 2nd place in the overall classification. The man who is showing the power that he's got in his legs after 19 days of racing here is this man on the front, Dario Frigo. He's got an awful lot of power in those legs, and he's getting himself a very strong ally in the form of Gilberto Simoni.
A fantastic piece of racing here by Gilberto Simoni. Never panicking. There's Didier, the famous devil that follows all of the Grand Tours. You don't want to get too close, but it's a good viewing position, and I'm glad that he's on the camera and we're not right next to him. I don't think he bathes a lot, but anyway, Simoni is doing an absolutely fantastic ride. He has the best ally he could ever dream of at this part of the stage, with Dario Frigo making the majority of the tempo. And I think that Popovic will look over at Didier, the devil there, and try to push a little bit harder on the pedals, not only to get away from him, but get back up into our lead group here. Popovic has done a great Giro so far. He's getting time on Garzelli. We haven't seen him for a while now, and he's getting a lot of publicity today. It was a brutal day in the Saint-Pierre climb. Snow on the road, icy conditions, very sketchy descent. Garzelli and Pantani both came down there. Frigo putting in a huge ride today. After he fell out of GC contention, I think he's been waiting for this day, riding within himself, and we saw him do that in the Tour de France last year. He was a GC contender before the race, fell out of contention, then identified one stage where he was going to definitely put the hammer down, and Frigo's done that, and Simoni's done very well to stay with him.
Well, the strange thing is, Simoni had announced before this stage that he was going to be the man who would lay down the law. He hasn't completely and utterly dominated Dario Frigo. You can see the team cars moving forward. That's not a huge gap down to Popovic. He seems to be getting into his own rhythm right now. He's lost 12 seconds on the 2 leaders. But it looks to me, Phil, as if, in fact, Gilberto Simoni is quite content to let Dario Frigo do all of the pacemaking here.
Well, he won't be happy if a Fassa Bortolo win another stage, because they've had more than a hatful, especially with the antics of Pataki on the flatter roads. but he's not worried about Frigo. Frigo currently 13th overall. His best ever finish came last year when he was 10th, and at the moment he is tickling now the top 10 because one or two riders we know are out. Pantani, who is 10th, is losing big time. Frigo has a real chance now to have his best ever finish in the Giro and can ride a very good time trial with one more still to come. So he must keep at it here. There's no reason for Gilberto Simoni to do anything at all because he doesn't worry him, and everybody else that does are a long way behind today. It's a great feeling when you're only 8.5 kilometers from the summit of the big mountain. Just one more mountain left in this race. It comes tomorrow and it is another mountain top finish. But this one, as you can see, right from down in the bottom, it's 20 kilometers to the very top, an average gradient of 4%, up to near. Now, this isn't the steepest mountain of the day, but it is the most decisive.
It's the most decisive because of what has come beforehand. We've been over two very high mountains where we've gone up to 7,500 feet approximately both times, and that's what has really laid the foundations, and Dario Frigo is quite happy now to get rid of his headgear. Let's not forget the rules have changed, Bob, that you can take your hat off on the final climb of a day when the climb is longer than 5 kilometers in length. That's a rule that's just come into operation just before the start of the Giro.
It was very improvisational work there by Dario Frigo, actually giving his helmet to the cameraman's motorbike. So tremendous amount of dexterity by the cameraman, who was able to continue filming and take Frigo's helmet away from him. So the bike racer is probably the most adept at improvising when a situation requires it. Simone is still wearing his helmet. He'll try to hand it off, but the team cars is a good point. They're spread out so far behind the bike racers that it might be a while before they catch up to Simone, see if he doesn't have any trouble at all on the bike course, and at this point he'll probably just throw his helmet down on the ground.
The face of Frigo now as he struggles here up the mountain pass. At least the roads are dry, promise of sun at the top of the climb. This is not as hard as the earlier climb. A chance here perhaps for Frigo. Simone wants to deposit his helmet as fast as he can and get on with the race. He's got to be feeling very good inside by the end of this day, which is not far away. Frigo, we think, might take the stage today, but it won't make any difference because the man in pink is going to increase his overall lead. Bob, the situation on the mountain is quite spread out, isn't it?
Yes, riders all over the mountain so far. Take a quick look at the final climb up to Chianale. You can see that Frigo Garzelli right up here, being chased by Popovic right about here at 33 seconds. Tocznik just behind him, a little bit further down, just over a minute to Tocznik. Down further, we have Garzelli with his teammate Zampieri chasing, and at the very bottom of the mountain is Marco Pantani, about 12 minutes behind.
And what happened to the sun then? I was looking forward to the weather forecast as well. But well, this is Pelazzotti here, Raimundus Rumzas, and a very, very tired Andrea Noe, who's fighting now for still holding on to his 4th place overall. Rumzas is fighting for his 5th place, and all of them really, if they keep going steady, could come up against Garzelli, who's still officially in 2nd place until the clock stops at the top of the mountain.
Well, one man made a recovery over the final climb there, the very difficult climb of the San Pair, was Eddie Mazzolini, who's managed to catch up with his team leader Stefano Garzelli, and he will pilot him all the way to the summit of this climb to try and keep him in contention. Let's not forget, Phil, tomorrow is another day, but look at the time gap right now. The time gap we're getting back to Garzelli is 4 minutes and 5 seconds, so that's probably around about still the 3-minute gap between Garzelli and Popovic, and that's enough to put the young Ukrainian rider up into 2nd place. These two men here, though, are absolutely stormy. You get a chance, a very brief chance, to see that this is not the steepest of climbs this afternoon, and you are now looking at men using huge gears. You can just see there Popovic is on the large chainring. He's digging very deep. He, in fact, I think went through a moment of glucose exhaustion, because as soon as the team car came up alongside him, he was taking on board an awful lot of high calorific drinks, Phil, to try and boost his energy for the last 15-20 minutes of this stage.
Well, you need plenty of those. You probably earn a fine for that because it's not really allowed on the last kilometres of the day. But there we are. We can see now Popovic is now hanging on. He must be inspired by the fact he's probably been told as well by the car the huge time gap he's built over Stefano Garzelli. He's also probably been told that Garzelli is in pain. He's bleeding from the knee and the left elbow. Marco Pantani, as Bob Roll has said, is just about starting the climb, so he's a long way down the mountain now. but this isn't the vicious mountaintop finish like the Zoncolan, and probably just as well, because looking at the faces of some of these riders, Bob, they have taken some huge packets out there today.
Well, not only have they been through 2 big mountain passes until this one, the weather's been very, very grizzly out on the road. Snow falling at the top of the Sun Pair made a very difficult descent. I think it's the only moment we've seen Gilberto Simoni in any difficulty at all. A little bit of cold and fatigue coming into his very lean body there. It's a minute 14 to Popovic. They're still increased their lead. Frigo is really on a really good form today. Simoni had to set up for a second. He had to shake some energy and some circulation back into his limbs and get back on the jazz, and he's made a big climb to catch up to Popovic and Frigo a little bit earlier, and now he's been the only man to stay up with Dario Frigo. That's Rumsauce chasing now. They're just a little bit behind Popovic. They're probably about a minute 30, 2 minutes down. Rumsauce might catch up to Popovic before the end of the climb, but I don't think anybody's going to catch our 2 leaders. Dario Frigo is flying up the mountain, and it's just been a grizzly, grizzly day of weather and beautiful racing, huge mountains and bad weather. A combination like that with Gilberto Simoni on great form and a resurgent Dario Frigo, you have a fantastic day of racing.
And let's not forget Georg Tocznik, who is just ahead of this group here and about 25 seconds behind Popovic. They could all be seeing each other in the next couple of kilometres if it works out that way. Well, we'll take another short break and then rejoin us for the rest of the action today. We won't be long.